You're listening to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast, your source of music news, stories, and 2-hour deep dive interviews with bands that have sold over 80 million albums. If you've been enjoying the podcast, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Now let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We are joined by a very special guest. He's achieved a level of mastery as the drummer for the multi-platinum selling and 2-time Juno award-winning band Walk Off the Earth. So welcome to the podcast, Joel Cassady. Joel, how are you? And is it true that you got high with Snoop Dogg in New York City?
It's allegedly true. No, it's definitely true. We back in what year would that have been? 2014, maybe. We had a chance to do the short-lived. They only did it one time. The YouTube Music Awards. They brought Spike Jonze in to direct it. They had we were sat behind Lady Gaga. It was this whole crazy thing. And as part of that, we were given a chance to collab with Snoop. So there we are in Manhattan at a rehearsal factory, and he comes in, a solid hour late in true Snoop Dogg style, and he's got his bodyguard with him. But his bodyguard, multi-purpose person on his team here, because his bodyguard was carrying this big Louis Vuitton bag. As we came to realize, his bodyguard is also his full-time blunt roller, and that thing is absolutely packed to the brim with blunts at all times and is ready to go. And there we are as Woat. We're all pretty experienced cannabis users, but doesn't matter when you're in with Uncle Snoop. There's something about what they're bringing around the world somehow. I guess they're above the law, and we may have embarrassed ourselves a little bit. I think at one point he was just making fun of me for being a white boy and sounding too stiff on the drums. So that actually helped me loosen up a bit. But yeah, that definitely happened, and we went on to do the performance at the YouTube Music Awards with him, and that was when he was in his Snoop Lion phase as well. So that was one of many trippy and awesome and wild things that I never thought I'd get a chance to do. That here I am with you today, thinking back on and being like, yes, that did actually happen.
I feel like his tolerance after a lifetime of smoking weed is like, this guy needs this like life-size joint or something.
Man, for sure. I will also say that Snoop is I'm so glad that Snoop is the guy that became like the kind of like most famous stoner in the world, because the man is sharp. Like, he is on it. For a guy that says he smokes, 55 blunts a day or whatever on average, whatever it is, some crazy number. The guy is sharp. He's aware of his surroundings. This obviously, right? You can't be where he's at and have done what he's done without being the smartest guy in the room and super sharp and tapped in. But he really is. Like, he when we were under the influence in the deepest form with him, he was just calling things out and had such a clear vision for the performance. And like, I'm glad he's the poster child of weed, because he's a really giga productive guy, and that's something that is possible. And that's something, I think that's one of those old school views of the cannabis user, right? Is that they don't get anything done, they hang out on the couch all day watching The Simpsons. But it's like, I think people would be surprised how many, what's the saying? All your if you don't like drugs and alcohol, take all your favorite albums and throw them out the window, right? It's kind of like that thing. But also, I think especially getting into these days with Canada being a regulated system, and like there's more access than ever in a safe and measured way to be able to use some of that stuff. And we could go into all the mental health benefits and all the things where I've had ups and downs with prescription antidepressants, anti-anxiety, and have always defaulted to the right dosage and strain and the whole thing of cannabis. So, but I realize we're not going, it's not the weed podcast. Let's stay focused here. Let's stay music driven, or wherever you want to take it, man.
It's funny because it's not out of character here, because a few episodes ago I interviewed a member of Strange Advance, and he has a story of smoking with Cheech and Chong. So it's that stuff comes up, again, you talked about musicians, and it's like, yeah, if you take away the drugs, the music's pretty bland. So also Snoop is insanely funny. I'm a big UFC fan, and they bring him in sometimes as a commentator. He just throws out the funniest, most random stuff. And, I play video games, and he's in an NHL video game, and they're like, oh, we have Snoop Dogg here. And you can tell he probably has no idea anything about hockey, but it's just funny what he says.
The guy's just he's just nailed it as the most, the warmest and most relatable human somehow, despite the fact that he's like a gazillionaire and lives a life that, that few will ever get to experience. There's something about him. I love that he can kind of do anything. And he's also I think in general we've been post sellout area. That was something that got tossed around, especially with musicians doing certain partnerships, brand deals, whatever over the years. But I feel like the great equalizer of the last decade of social media and YouTube and all that, meaning that anyone can build a huge following. The fact that it's that much more difficult now to stand out, I think has really helped any of those things. Certainly, we've never experienced that in Woe. Like when we think hard about when we get approached by a brand or for anything like that, and if we're going to go out with it, I think we built this trust with our audience that they know that we've really considered that. And like, again, I don't think it's really an issue at all these days because everyone's just trying to make it, man. And the playing field has been leveled. And back in the day when Led Zeppelin was one of the 10 biggest bands in the world, they all had private jets. They were all like a household name. Now we're in a situation where, I mean, you can do it, I can do it. Jump on Instagram, TikTok every day, discover someone with a multi-million person followership and you've never heard of them before. Like that's the reality where we're at. So I feel like that's kind of gone away in a great way because, I guess there's certain call outs, certain celebrities that are not immune to that. But for the most part, I feel like people just, if it's a band you support, if it's an artist you support and you see them doing something that obviously is going to help them along, you can't hate on that. And I will say, just on the topic of smoking weed with celebrities, as you do. Another fun one was we played the Ottawa Blues Fest. This one was, I think, 2016, 2017, and Seal just happened.
Mr. Kiss from a Rose.
The one and only just happened to be backstage sparking, and that went down. As well as we did something in Bulgaria years back. Erica Badu was there, and Cypress Hill was there. So that was a bit of a legendary sesh as well. Crazy, man.
That I'm Yeah, if you see Snoop or you see Cypress Hill, that has to go down. I saw Slipknot here in Ottawa and Cypress Hill was opening. And what's funny is one of the two members from Cypress Hill didn't make it past the border, which makes total sense. So there was 50% of Cypress Hill opening for Slipknot. I was gonna say when it comes to back in the day, bands would be called sellouts if they do something too commercial. And I feel like today it's more like we celebrate the hustle. It's kind of there's a lot of entrepreneurs and hustlers out there now, and social media promotes the hustle. So I feel like that works in the favor of the artists like Snoop, that's in every commercial, every brand deal, featured on every song. So I think that works in the favor.
Man, definitely. Like it's hard as hell to make it these days. That's the reality. You can have every duck in a row and be objectively this unbelievable talent with the whole business game together, the whole social media game together, and still fall short just cause the algo wasn't liking you, just because I'm sure you've heard like it's pretty dismal like these days. What was 10 years ago, if you had 500 Instagram followers, every post you send out is at least has a reasonable chance of reaching those people. Now I've heard percentages as low as 1% with, I've got 55,000 whatever on Instagram. That I've worked really hard to earn over the last 10, 15 years. And I've heard things as low as 1% unless you boost the post or X, Y, and Z. And it's like, that's the reality that everyone has to, get the rules that everyone has to play by now. And it's not easy. So I think the only objection there is if like there's a someone is in a situation where they've tried and failed a bunch and they're jealous or they see someone get a certain deal or whatever and they want to like anybody else who's going around the internet trolling and hating, right? There's always going to be those people, but I think by and large, especially for folks who've been doing it for a long time and have had the ups and the downs, when you see someone doing that, you're not selling out, you're buying in. I like to look at it that way.
So I like to share with our listeners how the guests and I know each other to show the importance of networking, of cultivating relationships, of building community, especially in the music business. You know how important it is to network. In our case, I've done a couple interviews over the last 2 years with Ill Scarlet drummer Suave Pure, who I know is friends with Walk Off the Earth. He shows up in some live cover music videos. And we've talked about Walk Off the Earth and his relationship with the band, and those clips have gone out there. So I'm not sure how we first came into the same universe online, but at some point I saw that you were starting to watch different clips, stories on Instagram. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. The Walk Off the Earth drummer is checking out different clips. So I'm not sure if that's how you ended up seeing the podcast, but once I saw that you were looking at clips, I'm like, oh man, that would be an amazing guest. I'm a huge Walk Off the Earth fan. I was in Mississauga for 11 years. I just got back to Ottawa during the pandemic. So uh, even in Mississauga, we would claim Walk Off the Earth as our own in the GT. We lumped you in the GTA with us. So that's how I think we ended up in the same bubble. And then I just asked if you'd like to be a guest. I don't know from your side if you have any recollection here.
Man, I don't. That might have been a late night, right before crashing out for the day thing. But I do totally remember seeing something. And I think it was Swab. Swab's the man. We go back a long ways, and this is just myself with Swab, let alone my G who runs Woat, all the way back to playing bar shows days, right? So I can't remember the exact one that I saw, but totally, man. And when I got the reach back at it, I was like, oh, it's this dude, nice. That's really rad though. That it's a Canadian thing and that you've been putting those guys on because we love those guys. And it's like, Canada churns out a disproportionate amount of talent. That's just a fact. You go around the world and you run into Canadians in every city doing big things. And it's like, it's such a great feeling and a proud moment to know that. It also puts kind of like a good pressure on you as a person that's had a chance to go out there and hopefully add to that story and add to that legend, to want to make sure we do it the absolute best and keep the legacy of Canada going.
I remember at one point a few years ago, while I was in the GTA, there was a moment in time where for the top 10 songs on the Billboard Hot 100, which is basically the 10 biggest songs in the world at that point, 7 of the 10 were not only Canadians, they were all from the GTA. So you had 4 artists, but with multiple songs. So you had in the top 10 at the same time, you had Drake, The Weeknd, Shawn Mendes, and Alessia Cara. And you're like, oh man, Toronto's killing it right now.
I remember that very moment, man. And like what an incredible thing. Now you got like a Tate McRae in there. I mean, it's just like there's just more and more every moment. And yeah, I think it just like, rising tide lifts all ships, right? And it's like this, it's really created this special sort of, yeah, legend for Canada that we certainly, the onus is on us to keep that going and to do whatever we can to continue creating great output from this country because the world's in a wild situation these days. So if we can at least, if nothing else, if we can continue to make sure that we're showing Canada in a great light artistically, then hey, I think that's a win.
I feel like we have to shout out Canada's pop godfather, the Biebs, the Biebs becomes the biggest artist in the world, and suddenly they're looking for the Alessia Cars and the Shawn Mendes. So I just for the Bieber fever for the fans out there, I had to drop the Biebs in there.
I mean, hey, I think he's from Stratford, right? Just down the road from us here in Burlington. And it's like he was part of that kind of, not that we weren't part of like kind of like that wave one of YouTube artists to get a chance to really do it, right? Like when I first got the call to join Wode, the channel had 13,000 subscribers at that point, and that was big for the time. And we're talking like a year, maybe two tops after Justin had first leveraged YouTube as the platform to be thrust onto the global stage, right? So when I first got asked to do that, Johnny and Marshall at the time had, just based on that 13,000 subs and being an early active band on YouTube, got a call to be part of the YouTube Digi Tour, which was this thing where YouTube invested early in these kind of artists that were starting to really do things in the platform, get them on a couple tour buses together and actually send them out on the road to do live shows. So I joined Woat with the understanding that I'd be joining them on this UK Digi Tour leg. That funny enough never happened, but of course I stuck around, and a year later we were in Johnny's kitchen shooting that video, that Five People One Guitar video. Yeah, what a wild thing. And that was like 15 years ago. So I'm officially at the point now as a 36-year-old where I regularly, especially now with a kid and stuff, like I regularly trip out about how much ground we've covered, how much we've done, and how long it's been since this all kind of took off.
Even though YouTube doesn't really do things like that anymore, I feel like they more than got their investment back on bands like you, where you guys have billions of views and they're making that ad revenue on that. I mean, you guys are as well, but they're making a lot on top of that, where it would for sure have paid off, even just on you guys, regardless of who else was on that tour.
Yeah, for sure. And also like, anything cover wise, that's always kind of split, obviously, right? You actually purchase, it's an automatic process, but you can purchase a per download. I guess this is back when downloading music was still the thing. You would purchase a per download license. Like, oh, let's get another 500 licenses so people can buy those. That would then have the automatic splits cooked in with the original songwriters, original producers, all that sort of stuff. But YouTube doesn't worry about any of that. They just take their, that's the side of the revenue stream that just has to get figured out amongst the users. They just sit on the side that says we're making a piece on everything. So of course they have, man.
So we're going to do a full 2 hour deep dive interview. We're going to cover your life, your career, your discography. There's so much to talk about. I mean, Walk Off the Earth, you guys are so prolific in your release of albums and EPs and singles. There's so, man, even with 2 hours, we're not going to be able to get to everything, but I like a good challenge. So we're gonna talk about as much as we possibly can. But we have to go all the way back to the beginning. We got to get the very start of this, your origin story. So where did this love of music come from? Is there an earliest musical memory that jumps out at you now when you think back to a time where music just seemed important, in a moment, bam, okay, now what's this music thing? It's got me hooked.
Man, that's an awesome question. For one, my mother, who unfortunately lost her life back in 2019, the same year we lost Mike Taylor, actually. What a year! But she was a trumpet soloist in her young years for a drum corps back over in Brantford, Ontario, that area. She spent her early life on maybe not a tour bus, more of like a coach bus going around to different competitions, but I think if the music bug came from anywhere, it came from her. As far as that like one singular defining moment of like I want to do this, I think for me it was honestly more. I'm of that age, man, where when I was a youngster, everybody wanted to either be Mark, Tom, or Travis from Blink-182, or be in Sum 41, or be in Green Day. That's that generation where those bands. I hope those guys realize that they are responsible for an entire generation of kids wanting to be rock stars and wanting to make music and do music for real, right? So that actually, you know what? I think that is it. That's that moment of discovering those bands and some crazy relatability in their music, and then going one step further and not wanting to just be a listener, but actually coming together with buddies of mine and saying, let's make a band. Let's do what these guys are doing. Let's try and go for that. And when I think back over the course of my life, all my closest friends have always been there because of music, right? And I've become so close with them because of music, and we've taken that journey together. And two of my best buddies, Gary and Mike, were those two buddies that in Gary's basement growing up, we just got down there and we wanted to be Blink-182, and we got a drum set and we got a little recording thing, and Mike played bass and Gary played guitar, and we just kind of went for it. And that put me on the path for sure. That got me into starting with the pop punk thing, and then starting to listen to more of my dad's records with some of the weirder Beatles stuff and some more kind of prog rock stuff, Zeppelin, all that, which led me into becoming just like head over heels obsessed with a band called the Mars Volta, getting into kind of my high school years. And that really was kind of the jet fuel, I think, that took it from, at that point, I was pretty good at playing Nirvana tunes and playing Blink tunes and Green Day tunes and stuff. But to discover a band that was happening then that sounded like these bands like Yes and Zeppelin and again, the Sgt. Pepper's era Beatles and stuff, but in the modern day, completely blew my brain open. And I just went so deep into I was just so obsessed with that band for years, and transcribed all their parts, and had every single element of every one of the recordings ingrained in my brain. And that actually led me on the path to music school. Here I am going deep as hell into this thing that I love and I'm passionate about. Why don't we continue the natural journey here and see if I can go to post-secondary? And this is at a time where my best buddy at the time, Derek, him and I were in jazz band at Nelson High School in Burlington together. And we were both super passionate drummers and musicians that were both really eager to want to go to music school, post-secondary for music. My parents were like, full support, whatever you want to do. Derek's parents said, absolutely not. You're going to law school, music isn't a real career. And I think about that a lot, again, especially now with a kid. I get that. And I feel like people often kind of emulate what maybe they had growing up, right? Maybe Derek's parents had a similarly strict thing going on, but I will forever be so grateful that my folks, I hope I'm stubborn enough that if they said no, I still would have gone for it. But obviously it helps a lot to have that push from them. And then I'll carry that even further into actually going to music school, and all the momentum of my life as a non-music student, but as a, as a music lover and player and studier and everything, getting to a Humber college and, you know, not liking it, not getting a weird vibe from it, and realizing over the course of the couple years that I was there that that was rooted in my discovery of music with my buddies in the basement, jamming out, having these formative youth experiences. That's what it was to me. That was the excitement to me, not getting in a classroom, being marked on my creativity and letting that in some weird way kind of like affect. There's people that went to Humber who, singers, for example, that in the early years had this raw raspiness, this grit to their voice. And I swear to you, on the other side of that, their voice was less cool. They might have been more technically proficient. They might have been able to sing a little more on pitch and have some more kind of tools in the tool belt, but that rawness, that realness, that grit, that rasp went away. And I think about that a lot as well, because I don't want to shit on music school across the board. There's some people who absolutely nail it and it's the perfect thing for them, and that's fantastic. Music school to me showed me the value of music school was it showing me what I didn't want. And that was just as valuable in terms of the cost of admission, then, in my opinion, than going and going all the way through and getting the degree and using that for whatever that's worth. Going there, realizing very quickly that it wasn't for me, and then starting to immediately think, what's going on beyond this? There's a lot of people here that are passionate, that are spending 12 plus hours a day in the rehearsal room. That's amazing. But what happens after this? I tried to really start thinking about that early, and not a lot of folks wanted to do that. They wanted to be all in on the music stuff, and I'll never shade someone for being super passionate. That's incredible. Go and do that. I have buddies that would literally say, I don't care if I'm living in a basement apartment the rest of my life. I just want to play jazz standards. That's amazing, dude. Go and do that. That's incredible. Not everyone in the world gets to experience that level of passion. That's amazing. But for me, some part of me was thinking business plan, early days, like what's this actually pushing toward? And when I failed to kind of be able to find the right answers to that question in the context of music school, that's when I really started to have a bit of a wandering eye, wandering mind, to making myself available to artists in the GTA that were playing shows and getting out there and going on tour. And one thing led to another, where the summer of my second year, I was basically like, I'm out of here. What I was going to say there was that Mark Kelso, the former head of drums and percussion at Humber, I had this moment with him where I sat down. I said, dude, like, I'm not feeling this. And, based on the couple of things that I've started to get going, kind of deprioritizing school a little bit and doing some gigging around Toronto, I've got a couple like these like small tour offers and stuff. Like, what do you think about me maybe going down that road and maybe revisiting school later? And he was like, man, when I was your age, I dropped out of Humber College to go on tour with Shaka Khan. And now I'm running the joint. School's always going to be here. Go and get it. And same with my parents supporting me. My hope is that if Mark said the opposite, I still would have gone for it and been that stubborn kid. But to have the blessing both of my parents already, but then of this guy that I respected and still do so much, as this mentor and the teacher there, that was the moment for me where I was like, I'm going to go. There's something in me that needs to go and experience this and see what's going on. The thing on the table at that point was a European tour offer with a local Toronto artist by the name of Barzin, small singer-songwriter, wonderful guy, which I just jumped on. We did a sprinter tour through Western Europe, and it was the answer to every question and every confusion in my head that music school presented, in terms of, this is what I want. Going out, goofing around, having fun with these guys that were all way older than me, but experiencing Europe for the first time and getting a chance to perform and just be out there and really doing it was like a huge light bulb and holy shit moment for me, where I was like, this is it for me. Where I started was it for me, not going and trying to have my skills fit into a rubric so that I can get a degree that obviously I would never show up to a band rehearsal with, hey guys, here's my music degree. Like, hire me now, like as if that matters. In terms of going to become a teacher, an educator, whatever, I think that's totally legit. But there's a great saying around Berklee College of Music in Boston, which is, it's kind of like, of course, an unofficial saying, if you graduate Berklee, your teachers have failed you, which I always think about. I love that. So that really, in a lot of ways, has become my story. And dropping out of Humber to go on tour and to come back and say, I want more of that. I'm going to leave music school so that I can prioritize doing that. led me on this path to getting introduced to Woat, which at the time their original drummer had just departed the group to take over his father's business, and it was a whole thing that way. So they were in between drummers, and here they are with this burgeoning YouTube channel and opportunity to go on the YouTube Digi tour. And that was where the whole conversation started, as me just kind of being back in Burlington, borrowing my parents' car, loading my drums into it, playing wedding gigs, playing shitty bar gigs, doing whatever I had to do to get my name further out there, because I wanted to, like, I just kept thinking back to the bars and tour. I want more of that. How do I get more of that?
Man, there's so much to unpack with everything you just said. I'll try to rapid fire all the things, memories that popped up, different things. So with Berkeley, I could be wrong, but I think John Mayer attended Berkeley and dropped out at some point. I think Aerosmith members attended Berkeley and dropped out at some point. So they're like you said, they started to get opportunities and they took what they learned there. They took the skills they developed there. They took the network, the people they met there, and they used that to springboard to the success that they've had. Would you talk about Blink 182 and the Mars Volta? So many memories just came back. So the Mars Volta, I saw them open for the Red Hot Chili Peppers years ago in Ottawa. Man, those guys can play their instruments, and you'll be happy to know. I think it's tomorrow the Mars Volta releases a new album. So it's in a different language. The title, I don't know if the album is, but the title is in maybe Spanish or something. So were you aware there's a new album tomorrow?
I am, yeah. I'm certainly not as plugged into to Volta as I was, but I know that there's something new coming. My favorite ever live performances have been featuring them. Two that jump to mind. One being I did see them as well on the Chili Peppers tour, whenever that would have been in Toronto at the ACC, which was fantastic. But the one for me that just like is like a flashbulb moment in my mind is when they opened for System of a Down at the Air Canada Center
That's a double bill.
four song set, hour long set, and John Theodore, the original drummer, which in my opinion is like the greatest drummer of all time, second only to like John Bonham from Led Zeppelin. I'll never forget this guy in a 4-song set going so hard that the lights came up and his body was literally steaming. Like there was steam coming up his body, and it was like, this guy's the shit. That one, and then seeing them at was it called, the Cool House in Toronto, I think, back in the day.
Yeah.
And they rolled in. They did a thing at MTV Canada earlier that day, and I got a chance to like say hi to the guys, which is huge for me, and be on their little TV performance. But then they rolled into the Cool House, and what ended up happening that night, they went on way late. And turns out why Omar, who runs the band, the guitarist, showed up, took a look at the sound system, the house sound system at the Cool House, said, "No, take it down. Go and get a hold of, go rent from wherever a better PA and this and that, because this is not going to cut it for tonight." So they literally, and it turns out after the fact they got like charged, and it was like a serious thing because they were like pretty rough with how they took down the previous system. They put in their own system that night, and then ended up playing the longest show of that tour, like a 3-4 hour show, when they were touring the album Francis the Mute, and played it top to bottom. And it was like the greatest, most transcendental experience of all time. Yeah, what a crazy thing. And that's just like, there's a perfect example of doing something for the passion of music. Like, Omar being like, I don't care. It's not up to my standard. We're going to fix it. We're going to go on late, and we're going to make it worthwhile to this audience. Where was I even going there?
It doesn't matter. The Widow from that album is so good. That's such a great tune. And Cool House, I think it's only like 2,000 people, so that's a great venue to see them. I saw Mudvayne there. I've seen some Coheed and Cambria there. I've seen some Cambria. I've seen some good bands there. Two more things. So talking about Blink 182, how they were one of the first bands that really got you excited about music. It just reminded me when I was maybe 12 years old, I grew up in a little town called Russell. It's like 3,000 people, and a little band of young kids played in a coffee shop after hours. And I remember going in, and it's the first live music I've ever seen. And it's, guys my age or a little older. And they played Josie from Dude Ranch. And I remember being like, this is so great. Like, people my age can do this. That's so cool. And then a few years later, when I was 14, my family and I did a road trip to BC, and I had just a Sony Discman. So you play one album at a time. And I remember at the start of the drive, we stopped at an HMV and I bought two albums. I bought Blink 182, Enema of the State, and I bought I Mother Earth, Blue, Green, Orange. So for this drive that's like multiple days, in 45-minute chunks, I'm just switching these two albums over and over. So it was hours and hours of Enema of the State and Blue, Green, Orange. So that's what comes back to me when I think of Blink 182.
And isn't it such a cool thing that you can like, it's amazing how music allows us to jump back to these moments in our earlier life that are so otherwise I think would be really tough to maybe. It just allows these flashbulb moments to happen, I think, right? Where like you're so emotionally tied to that experience and those songs, and you can remember those long drives and that being the soundtrack to them. I love that. One of my favorite things about music is that it kind of like helps you sort of pin certain impactful memories based on what you were listening to at the time and what was the soundtrack to that developmental moment in your life, or that big moment. I love it.
What's wild is there's all these studies and science behind the fact that memories that are tied to music get stored in multiple places in the brain. So you'll see videos where people have, Alzheimer's or dementia, and it's like they're not functioning at all. They're just kind of crumpled up. And they put music on that they loved when they were younger. And for that moment, they're 100% there and they sing the song perfectly. They're up and they're dancing. And then you take the song off and they go back down. And it's because I guess Alzheimer's and dementia wipes out a certain part of memories. But then when it's tied to multiple points, as well as with an emotional thing, it's able to pull enough memories from other places to make something cohesive. It's wild what music can do to the brain.
It's magical, man. Like that's how special is that, right? And that's what you were mentioning there is all just, in the psychological side. On the physiological side, I remember seeing Dave Brubeck, legendary jazz artist, creator of the song Take Five, which everybody knows, unbelievable pianist. Saw him at Roy Thompson Hall when he was really getting close to the end. Like he was I'll never forget, he had one person, I think each one of his daughters on either side of him, hobbling him out to the piano. And then he sits down and just shreds for like 2 hours. And the psychological side alone is amazing, but then like the fact that it somehow can even will the body, the physicality to pull from, an era that is long gone. Absolutely wild. So that is, again, just part of the magic of music. And I've actually been pretty deep into those stats. I'm sure we'll chat about this later, but just rehearsing market size and addressable market for this app I'm working on, getting more into the psychology side of music and like what it does and more importantly, what depriving a young person of music at an early age can actually do, and the sort of crossover benefits of stimulating the artistic mind early, whether through visual arts or audio arts or any combination of.
I love that you called it shredding on the piano. In my mind, I'm thinking of like a metal guitarist shredding with long hair. And then now I'm picturing like an old guy bent over just playing the piano. So, anyways, I love that you use that term shredding for the piano. Just tickling the ivories.
That's all. You can't call it anything else. The guy just like laid in, and it's like it's if everybody didn't realize who it was, if someone watching didn't know who Dave Brubeck was, they would have thought it was a skit or something, because it was that, like, what's the Johnny Knoxville movie where he plays the grandpa, and then you see those skits,
old man, old something, yeah,
bad grandpa or whatever.
Bad grandpa, yeah.
Same thing with like like pro skaters that are like 20 that will dress up as a grandpa and go and like pretend to be, you know what I mean? It was that level of whiplash, but it was magical. And again, what else can do that but music? And I did just see a recent thing where a guy goes to visit his grandma. I'm sure you've seen this stuff, right? In the hospital with Alzheimer's. And she doesn't remember his name. And he starts to sing, I forget the song, some old Sinatra tune or whatever it is. And she's right in there with him, pauses every little bit. And then they finish singing the song. And he says, Nana, what's my name? And she says his name. Like that's, man, yeah, you were mentioning too, right? It's like whether it's like the amygdala or the hippocampus or whatever kind of quadrants it's crossing over.
I definitely didn't say any of the technical terms, but I'll take credit for them.
You know what? I'm only saying those because I was just watching. Not sure if you're a fan of the show Severance.
Oh, it's the best,
dude. It's nothing.
I'm on. So I've done the whole thing twice. I'm on my third watch through, and I just finished episode 1 of season 2. So I'm about to finish the third run through, but it's the best show on TV since Breaking Bad. Unbelievable.
Let's try to not derail this conversation so that we're just talking about fan theories for the rest of the, because I easily could. Let's not even go there. But I was watching a video. I should send it to you. they hired, because of course they did, they went this deep with the show. They hired a consulting neuroscientist for the show. And it was an interview with Severance's consulting neuroscientist, who they actually cast in the episode where Helly gets her chip put in to be the one doing it, because they wanted to make sure that this was as medically accurate in the world that this show exists as possible. And he was talking about how, get ready for this one, we are not very far off from that actually being possible. Craziest moment of the interview is when the lady asks him, okay, so you're helping me understand that, severing someone one way could be possible so that, you can go and do the thing you don't like and then snap back. What about what we're starting to see with Gemma's character and how she's severed in, a 25,
25, yeah.
right? And he's like, actually, that would be easier. And he goes in this whole little thing about that. And it's like, dude, strap in, man.
The future is now.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you do it? Would you sever yourself so you didn't have to talk to people like me all day?
This is actually the best part of my days,
Right.
but I would, if there wasn't the kind of horror results element of the show, if it was actually pleasant for both, maybe I would do it.
Well, you see Lumen kind of piloting this stuff that they're testing with Gemma, right? Where this is what it seems like anyway, where they're testing the waters on something like they're going to market this to the masses and say, hey, you don't like airplanes. Guess what? You can sever that away from your life. Or you don't like going to the dentist, right? So I think there's something to be said for that. But yeah, it's about relinquishing control and the complications around that as we trust technology more and more and give away big parts of our life to this tech. It's scary. It's super scary.
Yeah, I think with AI and technology, I think we're gonna get there to the point where, people like to be immersed in entertainment, whether it's disappearing for 2 hours into the world of this movie or for 40 hours playing this video game where you're so immersed. And I think it'll get to the point where it's actually more doing it in the brain than on a TV where, you know, if when you're sleeping for 8 hours, you're dreaming and you're there in the dream and you're experiencing these other worlds and these other things, that's real when you're in it. So if your brain can already do that, it's just, okay, how do we control that to do it on purpose and to do it for something specific? So I totally think it's on its way. It's just how fast will we get there and will you or other people buy into that?
And we're already, we talk about these things that I feel like a decade ago would sound like science fiction, but we're talking about this right now. And there's somebody out there right now who has no control of their physicality, who can play video games with their brain because they have a Neuralink in. And these other brain computer interfaces are coming quickly and already doing incredible things, right? So it's all coming. And I agree, man. I think like it's one of the most kind of like shocking developments there, I think, is going to be when really it's the Matrix effect. It's like the full immersion, all sensory VR experience where you can be at home. I don't know if you watched Black Mirror too, right? That episode with Striking Vipers, I think it's called. And you just kind of press a thing, and then you're like, it's just a matter of stimulating the right parts of your brain to give you the effect that when you turn on the tap and you feel hot water on your hand. Yes, it's literally happening, but really what's happening is that your brain is telling you that, right? So I think like that's a weird era for us to get into when
they're just signals and frequencies.
But think of that what it's like. It's like if you want to work with someone at a company to design your ultimate vacation destination that literally doesn't exist in the real world, and then they can then send you there, and the sand feels real and the water feels real, and it's all to every perfect detail that you've designed. Things are going to get so wild, dude. It's scary. Again,
I think there's great applications of it. So, for example, they talk about, kids in insanely poor countries that they can't get an education, all that stuff. And imagine you're able to, I don't know, maybe government funded, that a kid can put on a headset and by sitting, in the dirt, wherever, they can attend Berkeley, and someone that can't afford to ever go see a soccer game has the best seat in the house where they're following the players through this, and they get they look right and they see the person next to them in the stands. And so I can see amazing applications, taking guitar lessons from Jimmy Page. Like, all those things can happen. There's the good side, but then all these TV shows that show you the horror side of it. So you got to be careful.
got to be careful, and you got to trust that the like ethical framework around this stuff is going to be hopefully well defined. It's like, I mean, at a time when I feel like trust in government is at an all-time low, like you really, what's the other option? There needs to be like a unified governing body to this stuff, or else it's going to go south real fast. Like, especially when there's like some of the wealthiest people in the world sitting at having the being at the control center of this stuff and being able to press the button that says, okay, let's make everything turn on the human. Like, that's the hope, is that we as humans will not. I feel like it's part of like sort of human achievement to not to kind of break shit and move quick, and then when we screw something up, we look back on it after the fact, right? And we kind of learn from that. The hope here is that we don't go so far in the one direction that we can't go back the other way. And next thing you know, we bring robots into the home, and next thing you know, there's no going back, right? So it's scary, man. Once again, I'm going to keep seeing this, especially with a child. I'm thinking about like what world is my kid getting into here, and how can I do as much as possible to create a safe framework for him, because it's uncharted territory here in every sense.
It's funny you say you hope that the people in charge make the right decisions that have all that power with these apps and these companies and technology. A few days ago for April Fools, I posted today is April Fools. Believe nothing and trust no one. You know, just like any other day, really. So I thought that was kind of I totally stole that from somewhere else. But I I have a little surprise here. So I did my research and I found out that you did study music at Humber College, and I was able to track down a student that you went to that college with who sent in some kind words. And this student also went on to be in a multi-platinum Canadian rock band. So I have some kind words from Seamus Curry from the Sheepdogs
No
and
way.
Bros. And Seamus Curry says, I first met Joel when we were both studying music at Humber College. I remember he was a very positive dude and a very versatile musician. It's great to see him attain such success with Walk Off the Earth. Get it, man. That's from Seamus.
No way, dude. Seamus is the man. And I will tell you that there's no greater feeling as someone who's had the path I've had, where school wasn't it, but I still made some great connections there. There's no better feeling than to be years removed from that on a festival and run into a buddy from school and be like, and just give a big hug. And you don't even need to really talk about it. It's like, dude, we somehow pulled this off. You know, this is also factoring in that, like, this was my experience anyway at Humber, was like, there was people at Humber who were like gods. They were like, they were on a full scholarship, and they, you know, there's this kind of like insulated side of like the music schooled music education world where there's some people there that are just like revered, and you really drink that Kool-Aid when you're at like at a Humber, or at least I experienced this, where it's almost like you're getting out of the way these people when they're coming down the hallway. It's like that level of you know what I mean? But once again, factoring in this kind of just trying to think logically and say, what's going on after this? You fast forward these 10, 15, 20 years. And one of the guys, I certainly won't mention him by name, but who was like the most perfect example of that, this like godlike figure during our years. He's like, I think sometimes doing music stuff now, sometimes doing composing stuff. Otherwise, I think has completely shifted past. And it's like, that is the reality of this field, right? Is that like, you can go and you can pay all the money you want to get whatever instruction, but like, if you don't have the agency, like the sheer will to just drive your band, your music, your whatever it is forward and play the game, and be in the same boat as everyone else these days, and play and do everything you need to do to try and give yourself that shot. Even then, like I was saying before, even then you might still not have a chance, but you at least have to be doing all those things. So it's a trip to see that a lot of those folks have since kind of, whether they've hung up music entirely or it's just kind of become a casual part of their life. All that said, to run into people like Seamus, and I'll shout out Alex Sawinski too from my year, a guy that we used to just hang out in the drum modules together, showing each other cool beats and stuff. Who he finished, I believe, but he formed a band called Bad Bad Not Good
Hmm.
at Humber, and they have gone on to incredible things. Like the first year that they decided to really go for it, you know, that was back when Odd Future was a huge thing. Tyler the Creator came over to their jam stage because they had a few kind of jazzed up medleys of Odd Future songs. Tyler showed up to their basement. They shot a video with him. And that year at Coachella, Frank Ocean hired them to be their backing band. They've gone on to do unbelievable things and do full albums with Ghostface Killah and just like do these incredible soundtracks, and like they're the shit. So like there's a couple of those. One other guy I should mention too is Matthew Burnett, same year as well as myself, Seamus, Alex. Matthew Burnett disappeared for part of, I guess, our first year in the degree program, and didn't mention anything. We all knew that he was like kind of part of the same circles as like Boy Wonder, right? If you know who that is, right? Like one of the biggest producers from the country, one of Drake's biggest guys. Matt disappeared for a bit and came back. He was there, in time for music class, in time for master class in year two. And we're all going around talking about, whatever you do over the summer. And Matt's like, I went and I co-produced Not Afraid by Eminem. And he's such a humble guy, such a nice and just like,
Just a diamond selling song.
Exactly. Right. So it turns out he actually was getting quite deep into those circles with Boy Wonder and those guys. T Minus is the other guy, and starting to really, really grow as a producer while still in the early years of his Humber College education, which he finished. The guy stuck around in music school with like numerous platinum, diamond albums to his name and stuck it out, which props to him. Case in point, like I was saying, music school is different for everyone. There's no two same experiences. I think they can come from that. And it's all about what you want to get out of it. I think more than anything else, it's not like you're going to school for business and you're coming out with your MBA either way. You got to know going in with anything art school wise, what do I want out of this? How can I cherry pick some of the stuff that's going to be presented to me and apply it to my own path and where I want to get, I think that's crucial to anyone who might be listening, considering music school or in music school. I would really highly encourage having that hard chat with yourself and that hard think about where's this all leading, because once the conveyor belt of school, once you hop off, it's all on you. So to not really think about the business side and really just the entire approach and where you want to get and what the steps to get there might look like, would be doing yourself a disservice, I think.
So I worked at Metalworks for 7 years in Mississauga, and while I was there, one of my coworkers was Noel Cadastre, who went on to work with Boy Wonder and Drake. So it's pretty cool to see just someone that took audio engineering like I did and just worked hard and worked on their craft. And suddenly this Drake guy comes through, and the engineer, rap recording sessions are insane. You know, r- Normally you're worried about the money, and it's like, man, if you book from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., you're there at like 9:45 a.m. and you do the whole thing. With rap, it's like they book it for 5 days and they show up on the third day at night and they just do a 24-hour session. It's just wild. And the engineer that was booked for the early Drake albums, he was like, I can't do this. Like these hours are insane. It's like we're just sitting around, nothing's happening. And then they just go to Noel, who's there. They're like, do you want to hop on that? He's like, yeah, I'll do it. And that was Thank Me Later, 2010, the start of, well, he had the So Far Good EP before that. But it's just wild to see those opportunities present themselves to those that are ready when opportunity is available.
You got to play the game. Yeah, that's so funny to hear, man. That sounds like classic hip hop for sure. That's great. And yeah, I know like a bunch of guys that are kind of in those circles and in kind of Drake's extended team and everything. And it's like, once again, what an amazing thing that's like part of Canada's lore and contributions to entertainment. And like, a lot of those guys say, well, basically half the year it's like bone chilling outside. So what else are we going to do? We're just going to go to the studio and just cook nonstop and get stuff done. So I definitely think there's something to be said for that about the weather kind of stoking creativity and either, even if it stokes initially or the whole time, depression, you can actually turn that into some pretty good art as well too, right? So
So we've been talking about you as a drummer, but Wikipedia has you listed as playing drums, percussion, vocals, ukulele, keyboards, guitar, bass, kalimba, and sampler. My main question is, what's a kalimba?
well, I should say disclaimer on that before I tell you all about the kalimba, that like jack of all trades, master of none really applies hard here. We kind of have built a brand around grabbing something that we otherwise never knew how to play, quite possibly playing it totally wrong, and in the process of that, offending everyone who's learned it the right way. And we hear those comments, but that's all those instruments that are mentioned there. Other than drums, we're talking jack of all trades, master of none, man. There's a lot to be said for just getting in with your buddies, like we have all these years, grabbing some stuff, figuring out a quick part, and just going for it. I really think that's been a big part of Woat's mass appeal. Is that like I think we've always tried to come from a place of we could just be your buddies from down the street who jam in their basement. You know what I mean? And I think that element has been part of the reason why we've been able to reach such a wide variety. You come to our shows and it's literally toddlers to grandparents and everything in between, right? So I think there's something there. But the kalimba is an African thumb piano and has a really, really lovely sound. I actually made one with my mom. My mom was a great woodworker way back in the day, just out of like hair clips and like just like a single piece of mahogany, where you can kind of like, you put the pressure on the one side of them and then it's just a matter of pulling them up and pushing them back to get the tuning correct. Really wonderful sound. There's lots of cool kind of tweaks to those that have happened over the years where there's people that sell like electric ones, right, that have a pickup in them and you can put effects on it and get a really cool thing happening. But yeah, really nice warm sound, but also has that nice sharp attack that like a percussion instrument like the piano. A lot of people don't realize the piano is a percussion instrument first and foremost. It's got that nice attack like that a piano key would, but has this kind of special sort of earthy African sound.
So what you're telling me is you're incredibly mediocre at an impressive amount of instruments.
That sounds great. That's going on the resume.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. So let's dive into Walk Off the Earth. There's so much to talk about. So the band formed in 2006. You joined in 2011. Um, do you remember the first time you heard of Walk Off the Earth, and how did you meet the members?
I don't remember the first time I heard Woat or heard of Woat, but there was this special show that my band from high school, the Lunateers, our big instrumental ska band, it was like 12 of us in it, was playing a festival called Ska Thaw in the winter in Guelph, Ontario, way back in the day. This is years before I joined the group. And on the bill was the Lunateers, some other groups, the Lunateers, Walk Off the Earth, and the Creep Show, which is a band that our girl Sarah had just literally, it was their second show with Sarah as the front woman. She had just taken over for her sister Jen because Jen started having kids and had to kind of step away from the group. So years before we came back together and did all the things we've done, we played this dingy basement dive bar, part of a festival thing in Guelph, Ontario. And that was my first moment of actually getting a chance to chat with Johnny from the group and see them do their thing live and see them using drumsticks on the guitar and doing lots of weird kind of fun stuff that anything a kind of antithesis of just stand there and play the songs from the album. They were, even back then, right, we're doing some really cool stuff that way, and I always remembered that about them. But also Johnny's just like hustle. Like I remember he was trying to like sell me I think it was Smooth Like a Stone on the Beach at the time, their CD at the time, and saying, maybe grab a couple extra copies and sell them to your friends, and like hustling hard and being like, dude, this guy is all in, and really actually respecting and appreciating that.
Almost every band that goes on to have success has at least one member that's the hustler. Maybe there's a different member that has more talent, but there's always one member that is the business acumen behind it. I remember hearing stories of Chad Kroeger from Nickelback, where here in Ottawa, there was The Bear, which was the big rock station, 106.9, and it was Kat Thompson was the head of The Bear. And I've had conversations with her, and she, one claim to fame for her is she was there way back before Nickelback was signed. So they independently released Curb, and Chad Kroeger, each member of the band had their thing that they were in charge of. And Chad Kroger's deal was trying to get radio play. So he would just independently contact radio stations. And Chad Kroger reaches out. He's a nobody, reaches out to Kat Thompson and says, hey, I'm in this band Nickelback. Here's our album. Here's the single. And Kat Thompson started playing independent Nickelback way back in the day. And, Nickelback goes on to be the best-selling band of the last 20 years. And she says even to this day he'll call her from the back of like a golf cart. It's him and Dave Grohl's driving, and he'll be like, you're not going to believe what's happening right now. Like that's the relationship they've built. But just to show that every band needs one hustler, or else the talent the band has doesn't get a chance to be seen.
Man, for sure. Like that's back to the whole like trying to prioritize business. There's a lot of artists that just want to focus on art. And that was another one of my big takeaways from music school, right? And there's a lot of people who were proficient in business who see artists doing their bleeding heart artist thing and say, I can make money on that, right? But you do need that person in the band to really be thinking about what's, are we trying to really do this, or like, what are our books looking like, let's budget for this tour, like stuff that seems so obvious. I can't tell you the amount of folks that I know who, and again, you can't shade somebody for just being so passionate, like who
You
said, let's
can't
just,
you can't say budget to a musician. That's like, that's a scary word.
to anybody out there who's just like ever gotten together out of the sheer love of it and made music with their buddies and said, let's hop in a Sprinter and just go for it, especially in Canada where you're driving 10, 12, 24 hours between cities sometimes. So much love and respect for that. But if you want to scale that up at a certain point, you're going to either learn a very hard lesson or really just have an opportunity to step back and say, what's the business plan here? How are we structuring this? What's it going to all look like? And that's something, yeah, that I will say for sure about Johnny has always been really top of mind for him. And that's the reason why he, when I first joined the band, he owned the back half of a studio in Burlington here called B Town Sound, alongside our buddy Justin Coop, which is still a studio and does great things. We spent a lot of the early Wout videos are in this room with the red curtain, which is kind of looks like the Joe Rogan curtain. We did all of our early stuff in there and in the back there. And at the time, G was running his own label, recording local artists, and doing that at a high level, while also doing the band sort of thing. So we already had such a good grasp on how to run all that stuff and approach that stuff. The group had done a couple Warped tours and had done a few things. And like, you could tell that like right away for me, it was like, okay, these guys are, when I actually got brought in, years after the Ska Thaw show in Guelph, when I actually got brought in with the guys and we were jamming, right away, it's just like even on the emails leading up to it, it was like, what's the plan here? What's going on? Are we making money? Are we really doing this? How much prioritization can I devote to this based on how you're running things right now? So I'll always respect that a ton with Johnny. And all these years later, getting into some ventures of my own and stuff, I really am grateful for really just being able to watch the guy, obviously work with him over the years, but just watch the guy and the decisions that he makes and the sort of hustle mentality and definitiveness approach. That's another thing for artists. I think the act of being artistically definitive, whether it's in the studio and saying this song is ready to go, or whether you have a business decision to make and you say, fuck it, let's just go for it. That is one of many things I've learned from the guy in terms of just like making quick decisions, not getting too in your head, and just like, there's a Tina Fey quote, right? You can stand at the top of the slide and think about it all day long, but at a certain point, you just got to jump and go down the slide. And like that, I think, again, back to artists being so touchy feely and so in their heads a lot. I'm firmly of the belief that the best songs ever written, the best books ever written, the best art ever created, any variation of that we'll never get to experience, because that, unfortunately, that artist got too into their head and decided it wasn't good enough or moved on. And you know what I mean? So like, the stuff that we do get a chance to get out there and to be in a position where people are actually listening and waiting for, what a gift to have an audience that's waiting for more stuff from you, that you don't have to go out and try to be like, guys, look at this thing I did. It's amazing. There's people that already know that and they're waiting for your stuff. What a gift that is. So to use that as fuel to get out of your head a little bit and make decisions quickly and definitively, and know that you'll always look back, I think, at years back and have some element of cringe factor on what you did back then, but it's not about that. It's about what's next, I think. And yeah, moving quickly and definitively is kind of everything, because I know how artists are. I'm one myself, and it's so easy to just get lost up in your head and overthink everything and that whole process. And like I said, I think unfortunately some of the greatest artists of all time, we may never get to meet or experience their contributions because they let their mind get the better of them. So,
Us musicians, we love to procrastinate, right? We just want to sit there and play our guitar and that's it. How did you find out that the band was looking for a drummer, and did you have to audition, or did they just already know your skills and said, hey, this is our guy?
Great question. So a buddy of mine, fellow Lunateer, my buddy Tyler Norton, he went off to Humber before I did. I took a year between going to post-secondary. Tyler went right to Humber. He's a trombonist. And over the course of that, he actually went out at an earlier stage with Then Walk Off the Earth to be part of a small horn section they added to the band for Warped Tour. So he was already on their radar, and Johnny called him when they were looking for new drummers. So this would have been shortly after we finally kind of like dissolved the Lunateers, because I was going up to music school. Everyone was going to post-secondary, right? It was time to end the high school band. this would have been very shortly after that that G would have called Tyler, said, "Hey, I know you've been doing the music school thing. Do you know any kind of great drummers?" And I guess I was one of the names that he tossed out there. And it never really felt like an audition. It just felt like G and I chatted so much ahead of time that it just felt like, let's get in and just do this. Like he sent me all the songs they were working on at the time. I went nuts, creating the best parts that I could to those. And really, it was just like we got in that first time, him, myself, and Marshall, that first time, and it just worked. There was never really any discussion. It was just like, okay, you're here now. Let's go. What are we doing? What shows we got coming up? It was that quick.
And was there a moment where it became apparent that you were officially a member, or it's you just stuck around and but oh, I guess I'm a member, or was it a clear cut thing?
You know what? I think it was that first year of us just kind of playing shows at the Red Rooster in Burlington and other kind of bars and various things like that.
Wait. You went from the Red Rooster to Red Rocks. Is that what I'm hearing? That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Started from the bottom. Yeah.
Truly, right? That first year, I think it's not like we got any new promo pics done or anything like that. I very much saw myself as in a support role to make sure that, this group could continue on and we could kind of figure out the next step. That next step ended up being us leaning harder into YouTube. And at this time, G was also starting to work with Sarah, engineering, producing her solo material. Away from the Creep Show, she had kind of and continues to have her own sort of acoustic singer-songwriter stuff. So he at that time was also working with Sarah. It wasn't until and Mike Taylor had recently joined the band at that time. Mike Taylor entered the band via Johnny's sister. Here's the whole tangle of it all. Johnny's sister, who formerly was with Ryan Marshall, who was a founding member of the band. Johnny's sister, Francie, ran a thing called Stars Academy in Burlington, a dance academy, which Mike Taylor's daughter, Miley, was part of. And that's how, crazy interconnectedness there. But that was all happening sort of thing. So there was clearly like this big reorganization of the group happening that I think in the meantime, they kind of satisfy everything on the calendar. Johnny and Marshall just kind of like kept things as the two piece. And that all changed when Sarah wasn't even officially in the band when we shot the guitar video, right? She was collabing a bunch, but at that time it was just G, Marshall, Mike Taylor, and myself. She came in for that guest appearance, and really, I think it was that moment of things hitting critical mass where that certainly felt like the right time to roll out the updated version of the band and get the new promo pics done and everything happened from there because like it literally was like I'll never forget shooting that video, putting it up online. I had recently gotten into Reddit at that time. I don't know if it still is, but Reddit at that time was like one of the 3 or 5 most visited websites in the world. And I had just gotten really into Reddit and we put up that video. And the next morning I woke up in my room and opened up Reddit and the top of the front page, number 1 entry was a Washington Post article covering our video. And what a surreal moment. And I was like, okay, you can have on Reddit, like there's everything. And then there's just your customized view. It's like, okay, surely this is just like the music subreddit and it's like my view and like, hey, that's awesome. Somebody saw it. No, it was the number 1 thing on Reddit and it was a Washington Post article. And that was the moment of like, I think things are about to change for us.
That's wild. So that's in 2012. You guys released a video in which all 5 members are playing one guitar and you do a cover of Gautier's Somebody That I Used to Know. And within 4 months, this video has 175 million views, which what does that even mean? It's so many numbers. And now today, the video that's been uploaded on a few different accounts combined has 215 million views. Almost no human being will ever experience that level of success, like that pinpoint moment where something is a global sensation. Can you share what your life was like at the very pinnacle of that?
Dude, that whole first year was just such a blur. It was literally just like, so at that time, Wout didn't even have like official management. Like we at that time, we ended up calling the managers of the Creep Show, Stomp Records out of Montreal, they were like, things were exploding. We had to just like figure something out immediately. Like they immediately jumped on a plane, flew out to Burlington. We set up in Johnny's living room and just like went through it all. And it wasn't really too long after that we were just on planes for the rest of the year going around. One of the first things we did was go out to Germany actually, and in addition to kind of all this sort of like who do we want to sign with or whatever, there was just all these appearances, right? TV and like going down and doing Ellen and all this sort of crazy stuff in this first year. It was a total blur. Definitely like sitting down my family and saying, as this guy who had just dropped out of school, and my parents are starting to get a little nervous about like what's going on here. Where's this all? I think for school, even in isolation for supportive parents, is like at least he's on a track and and he'll have something to show for it. I think coming home was tough for them because it was like, what now? Sitting them down and saying, hey, we're going to do Ellen, was crazy. I say this too, which is funny. All the like sort of international stuff obviously was incredible, but like to get the first front page of the Burlington Post hits different, man. I swear. Like there's something
That
about
slaps.
that that normalization effect of like, here's this Washington Post headline, and here's us on Ellen, and here's us flying out to Germany and doing their version of like Jimmy Kimmel out there and everything. But to come home and see it on a newspaper that we look at every day, and but we're on there, was like honestly, I would say is one of the pinnacle moments that first year, because it was that, and like actually to my boomer parents who still weren't really understanding like the value of like digital and that being kind of the new medium, for us to start getting radio play, conventional terrestrial radio play, they were like, holy like that was, for them and for a lot of my family who were small towners from Paris and Brantford, that moment of like, I heard you on the radio today. It's like they don't care that we got 200 million views. They heard us on the radio. So that now we're a big deal.
I remember being 16 and working at a gas station and looking down, and on the cover of the newspaper, there was this young blonde kid, and it says, "This is the future of whatever." And it was Ryan Gosling as a kid who was maybe just doing the Mickey Mouse show, something like that. And he was from Cornwall, just a few cities over. And that's the equivalent. You guys are the Ryan Gosling of Burlington, is what I'm trying to say.
Dude, if I'm the Ryan Gosling of anything, sign me up. Sign me up. Isn't Jim Carrey? I know Jim Carrey went to school for a portion of his young life in Burlington, but he's from the area as well, I believe. Like it's just nonstop talent out of Canada, man.
Alanis Morissette, Ottawa. So talking about Ellen, so you guys recreated the five musicians on one instrument live on Ellen. How hard is it to actually pull off that song in that format?
Really tough. Really, really tough. I mean, the video itself took 50 plus takes, right? Just to get things feeling comfortable and everything. So to go out there she had probably the single biggest daytime television platform at that time, right? So to go out there, well, everything's going nuts and our brains are like split in every direction because there's so much like, yes, we're there in Ellen, but then we got to go and fly and do all these other million things and all this crazy stuff. It was a lot, and definitely not our best performance of it, but it was what it was, and it was that first holy shit moment, certainly for us, of getting a chance to go and do that, and we move on from there. Ellen was sick at the time, so she wouldn't. I remember she fist bumped us. She wouldn't give a handshake because she was sick at the time. And that was also on a Thursday, which I believe she shot 2 back-to-back episodes, so she could have Friday off, and her team get a Friday off. Although who knows now? Maybe she kept all of her team there on Fridays and over the weekends. Who knows what the real story is there, but she gave us all guitars, and the joke was that I know you guys can't afford your own guitar each, so hey, we got you one for each of you, so you don't have to share one guitar anymore.
That's amazing. And rumor has it that the session where it took you guys like 50 takes to get the final video that went viral, that was like 14 hours. Can you speak about that? And when you got the final take, did you know you had something special? Like, could you have ever imagined that it would have gone on to do what it did?
Right. Yeah. It was definitely a marathon day. 14 sounds conservative, to be honest. By the way, as well, MC Beard Guy Mike Taylor wasn't ever supposed to be in the video. We set that up and arranged that as a 4-person situation. He just happened to kind of, when we were on hour 10, 11, 12, he was touching base and saying, how's it going? I think he was trying to just chat with us, and we were not getting back to him. We were like, dude, we're still going for it over here. He just showed up 11th hour style, literally 11th hour. And that wound up being probably like the most viral element of the whole video, right? But I don't think there's some videos where, especially ones that are like high stakes and where there's like, really moving variables involved. Usually in that sense, when you got it, and it's like a huge relief moment or a huge celebration moment. I don't think there was that with that one. I think we were so sort of like just like zoned by hour 12, 13, 14 that it wasn't until we were watching things back that we said, this is the one. By the way, as well, like none of us thought it was going to be some breakthrough video of any sort, which I think is there's something to be said about that. You hear about people, whether it's a hit song or a hit, really anything, that was one thing that they just tossed out into the world and they moved on. And they're 5 projects later, they hear that went out and ended up doing crazy things. That was definitely the experience for us. We put it out there. We thought it'd be cool, but we didn't necessarily think it was going to be this. How can you really expect that, right? It's even back then, let alone today, trying to get a video to go viral. But how can you expect that it's going to do that? We just thought, cool, this is going to be another thing. Let's move on. Let's plan out the next shoot. Let's plan out the next shows. Let's figure out the next stuff. And it just stopped us all in our tracks, and we just had to just ride that wave. And I say ride the wave, but what I really mean is work our asses off. I should really make sure to delineate those two, because at the same time, our video took off. That kind of same month, there was this lady who was crying on the toilet about how much she loved her cat or something, and she sang this little song, and she ended up like selling shirts. Props to her. She like capitalized as much as she could. But I think about that a lot too, because it's like she had actual 15 minutes, right? She had her 15 minutes. She made a couple bucks, I'm sure, on the shirts or whatever, and then she was gone. Us as a group of folks who truly never thought we were gonna get a chance to make it at this level, right? We all wanted to, we all hoped to, but as if, right, just by the numbers, right? You gotta Most people assume that that's just never going to happen. Same with like pro sports or anything like that, right? It's just like, I guess the difference here being that like we're an independent band that is having success that we need to kind of like drive ourselves here, right? So case in point, the blow up happens, and it's like there was this kind of collective, let's buckle the hell down here. And like this 15 minutes that we've got right now, we are going to stretch that into, literally, I can say that now, stretch it into 15 years plus, out of sheer stubbornness, determination, hard work, and just like willingness to want to always keep eyes on what's coming next. I think, whether that's a new social media platform or a new format that's working and it's really sticky amongst new viewers, or anything, any combination of things that involves staying tapped in and staying finger on the pulse and staying current. I think we've done a hell of a job at continuing to put the work in to be able to test those waters enough to be able to stay in people's faces, really. I mean, isn't that what it's all about these days, right? Attention economy. If we're not doing our best to get in people's faces and grab their attention on the doom scroll on the timeline, someone else is going to come and take that spot. And there sure is no shortage of, especially these days, talent out there, that people that could come by and steal that attention away from us. So I think that if nothing else, that work ethic, that sort of unwillingness to want to not have this life and hold on to this life and create new opportunities for ourselves over all these years, despite losing members, despite X, Y, and Z ups and downs, I think we continue to kind of default to a spot that is, what's next, what's going on, what's the next thing, and how do we action it. And for as much as it's been nice to, as a group that started by wearing every hat ourselves, it's nice to have, we have our studio in Burlington now, and we have a couple of folks who are in there helping us out and doing that and working for us, but by and large, we are still wearing every hat ourselves, and that's just kind of the way we've always done it, and the way that we've been able to ensure that everything goes out with the right Woat stamp on it. So I don't think that'll ever go away, even though, like I said, we're grateful to have more help these days, but that's really just more because the volume of output has increased as such, and it's kind of past the point of any one of us being able to hold down on our own. So yeah.
Can I point out that if you guys locked in your final performance of that song in under 10 hours, there'd be no mic in that video?
Exactly, man. What does that say about going with the flow and just kind of like
Yeah.
gut, right? Like we knew we didn't have it yet at that time. And truthfully, yeah, like now that I think back on it that you're mentioning, it's like him being that missing piece. There's a great chance. We should honestly, I should ask you, we should look back at the pre-MT takes, because we
You
probably
should see exactly what moment he comes in for the first time.
we probably had a couple banger takes in there as the four of us, but something about it wasn't feeling like we had nailed it yet. And when he showed up, we had it within a couple hours. So man, that's a really good point.
When when you think about that number, 215 million views on that video, can you even try to grasp what that means? For example, I don't know what day it is today, Thursday. Tuesday, I went to the Sens game. So the Ottawa Arena is right down the street, and that's say 22,000 people. So, I look around the arena and, I just saw Our Lady Peace there, and it's like, okay, this is what 22,000 people look like. That is an insane amount of people. And then I go to the Rogers Center and see Roger Waters, and there's, I don't know what that is, 55,000 people. And it's like, okay, you can grasp what that number is. So 55,000 people in a stadium is an unbelievable amount of people. Now try to think 215 million. That's like, what is that, 20 times the population of Canada? Like if you took all of every person in Canada and put them all together, and then you did 20 times that amount, that's how many people watch that video. I don't want to explode your mind or anything, but what do those numbers mean to you, if anything?
Man, one thing I'll say as well is that like that might be the numbers on aggregate for like the different uploads of that on YouTube, but there were a bunch of years, it's changed since certainly, of course, but there were a bunch of years where Facebook video reposting was like out of control. Like we at one point tried to just track that. People like they weren't policing it at all. It was really tough. YouTube obviously got on top of that pretty heavily. Facebook never did. And like we're talking like easily conceivably in the billions of views in terms of like at one point we've tracked down like 300 reposts that all had views in the millions, right? So like you extrapolate from there and it's I mean it's absurd. You can't possibly quantify it or relate to it in any reasonable human way when you see those numbers and you think of the fact that like our videos have been viewed easily billions of times, right, by people in the furthest stretches of the globe. And it's like I think we try not to think about it because it's a total trip. It's wild to be able to have reached that many people, and really the hope is that we've been able to inspire. My biggest thing is like my proudest achievement as an artist is like hearing back from others that our music was able to inspire them in the same way that probably Blink-182 back in the day and what the Mars Volta did to me, right? So that is something I like to focus on a little more, but you can definitely get lost in the numbers. And yeah, that's it's I mean it's an insane number and an irrelatable number by any human measure. But then you go around the world and you like sell out rooms for the first time visiting a country you've never been to before that doesn't speak the same language as you. And then it starts to make a little more sense in terms of like, yeah, this is really caught on and this is really allowing us to do something that the previous generation of artists literally was like, that wasn't possible. You had to go through the well-defined label system. You had to have a big hit record. You had to be selling tons of physical copies. You probably, even with all that in mind, you probably still had to have gone through a place before and built up that kind of live track record. We're in a position now where you have that right viral hit and you can go and sell at a tour of places you've never been before on your first time through. That never used to be a thing. So crazy.
And what thoughts, memories, emotions come back to you now when you think back to that period in time that kickstarted this 15-year journey of success that you've been on?
Man, I think there's a lot to back to kind of the theme of trying not to overthink shit all the time, especially as an artist. And I think that's something that plagues a lot of artists. There's something in me that, knowing that it was gonna make my parents uncomfortable as the people who were so supportive of me going into it in the first place and always have been so supportive of my music career, to think about the fact that even with that in mind, something at a gut feeling level wasn't sitting right with me about the path that I had started on there with music school and the whole thing, and starting to step back and starting to focus more on myself as a live performer and stuff was scratching this itch that felt really good and that I wanted to explore more and more and more of. So I would say beyond anything else, the fact that little inclination, following that gut and going with that and really just trying to prioritize that over everything else, realistically is what has led me to the life and career that I've been able to have with this. And as a serially anxious person and someone who's battled with anxiety and depression a bunch, to think back to that, leaving the safe, once again, even in isolation, the safe surrounding of a music school, and saying no, there's something else out there for me that I'm going to really just kind of go for. That's what's required in actually having an opportunity like this, I think, right? Is hitting that point where you say, if you've been fortunate enough to experience something in life that feels really good and really is satisfying, creatively fulfilling, and whatever that is, and say, that's it, that's what I want. I'm going to go for that, regardless of what it takes, regardless of how long it takes. I'm going to make sacrifices. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get there, because isn't that what life's about? Right? Not everyone is a passionate person. I think about that sometimes too. Not everyone has something that they wake up in the morning and they're so excited to dive into, right? So to be a passionate person to begin with, let alone to then start to see a path for yourself that might actually allow you to get to this point where you might get a chance to live your dream. I might get a chance to feel some of the feelings that Travis Barker or John Bonham, I was going to say John Theodore from the Mars Volta, that those guys got a chance to live because maybe at a certain point in their life, they said, I'm going all in on this. And that's the possibility more so than ever these days of what can happen when you decide to go all in on something. Alex Hormozy, I'm sure you know who that guy is. He's like a business entrepreneurship. He's awesome, right? He's like, you got your like Tony Robbinses and like Grant Cardones that are like always trying to
He's
sell
the
you.
new guy, right? The $100 million deal book and all that.
Hormozy is like just so straight up, and he's not trying to sell you. I think he actually is probably trying to sell you stuff, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels like your buddy chatting. And one of the things he says is, what sets apart the people that make it and the people that don't is how long you're willing to be uncomfortable. How long are you willing to stew in discomfort, knowing that bigger risk, bigger reward, right, is what's ahead of you if you can stick with that longer than most. And I think that's a perfect encapsulation of the artist's journey and hitting a point where it says, okay, let me go the safe bet. Maybe I got a kid on the way. Maybe X, Y, and Z. I have dependents where I need a more reliable income or any variation of that. Yeah, but even with all that stuff in mind, I need to think about when I'm on my deathbed and I think back to the decisions I made and the path that I put myself on, am I going to be happy with the decisions that I made when I'm wrapping up my time on earth here, right? I think about that a lot too. And that's yet again another thing that you think about a whole lot. I am certainly anyway with a child now too. So a lot to be said, I guess, to answer your question, a lot to be said for going with the gut. And it gets thrown around a lot. It's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason because there's a lot of people in positions of getting a chance to live their dreams and create amazing things from nothing that wouldn't be in those positions had they not said, you know, do I do this? Do I go out on a limb? Do I risk it all for my ultimate satisfaction and happiness?
My final question about the viral video. After the video goes viral, the two artists on that song, Gautier and Kimbra, both posted positive responses to your version. Is it special when the actual artist shows that they love what you did? Because maybe you love it, but every now and then you'll see an artist where the original artist is like, yeah, I hate new metal. I hate that cover. I hate whatever. So to get the actual green light from the artist themselves. And that was the single best selling song of 2012 as well.
So some people don't know that song went on to win the record of the year Grammy, right? In obviously in the US that year. That song in 2011 had already had its own rise and fall. Gautier is from Belgium originally, lives in Australia, and that song had already won its awards, had its run, been through the radio cycle, the whole thing at that time. So I mean, it feels weird to say this, but like we sort of gave the song, we gave ourselves a career in the process, but we sort of gave the song a new bit of life, a new bit of sort of spotlight in North America that wound up kind of leading it on this path to him coming over here and selling an amphitheater run his first time over in North America and getting that Grammy and everything. So when it first happened, it first took off, it was funny because like between artists, between us and between him and Kimber and stuff, it was just all pure positivity and love. And like everyone is obviously having a huge win here. So it's great. Behind the scenes, we had just signed with Columbia Records at that time, and he was with Universal, and behind closed doors, there were like lawsuits aplenty happening between like at that time, labels didn't like it when a cover version or a repost of something, back to the Facebook thing, got more views than the original. We actually encountered this with our cover of Closer by the Chainsmokers as well. It was all like they reposted it at first, the whole thing all positive and all love initially. And then it's like, wait a minute, this is doing a little better than we want to see. And then it gets like, the right legal team can complicate anything that might not have otherwise needed to be complicated in terms of were we licensing our downloadable, sellable versions of that song correctly? Oh, maybe we weren't, or maybe they want more because of this song has done this for our career, or X, Y, and Z. It got actually quite complicated. I was dating a girl from Australia at the time who I met in New York City, and I went out to visit her back home in Australia, got a chance to see Wally Gautier in Melbourne, was his hometown. No, we saw him in Sydney, actually. He's from Melbourne. And see him and chat with him after. And same thing. It was like, what a warm guy, what a nice guy. It was a purely positive exchange, but we both knew going into that exchange that it was like a legal shitstorm happening. I think the vibe was like, let's let the people who do that for a job deal with that right now, and let's just celebrate. By the way, like he played that song middle of the set. Here's him playing in his home territory, middle of the set. Didn't get a huge reaction beyond the other stuff. It's such a different dynamic over there compared to coming from the part of the world that this song was everywhere possible and was still exploding and everything. Middle of the show, nothing crazy. It was clear that, like, really weird too to experience the fact that that song had already had its moment over there, despite having its first giant moment in North America at that time.
It's funny, the artists themselves, like the Chainsmokers and Gautier, they love the creativity and the honor of someone covering their song. But then you have the machine behind it that's like, okay, how do we monetize this? So, yeah, I think Gautier'd be happy with you made him a 250 million viewed music video essentially for his song. And gave him your version is a platinum hit in Canada. It was a top 10 hit on the Dutch charts. So I think he's cool with it. I think he's all good. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's talked about having nothing but respect for people who are that true artist above all else, especially above the business side. I don't know if you're aware, like in the years following, like that was like a moment for him where like all eyes were on, and he had a chance to be like massive in the States and in the whole thing. And what he did after he made all his money on that and everything was like get his like childhood band back, like his like teenage band back together, and they just go on I'm sure it's small means like playing multi-thousand cappers, but like they basically just kind of tour around, to my knowledge, tour around like Europe and Asia and Australia and do their thing. And he's really kind of like made a cognizant step back from what would otherwise have been him basically going the like pop star route, I guess, really, but by and large. So you got to respect that as well, because he clearly got a funny feeling from being so exposed and so close to the kind of seedy underbelly of the industry. And it's like that one guy, what was his name, Taylor something, that won American Idol the one year, and the guy who was like a crooner singer, right, from like New Orleans or something, and he won. And then he saw the contract and saw the deal points and met all the people, all the slimy folks, and was like, dude, no, like I'm going back home for this. What are you doing? Like, you got to respect that. So my understanding, I could be wrong, but my understanding is that Wally actually, that's the path he took after all was said and done, and the kind of dust had settled from all the chaos of somebody that I used to know.
Before moving on, I just have to mention that listening to somebody that I used to know with a good pair of headphones, it might be my favorite mix and production of a song ever. So I don't know if you've ever like really soaked that song in, but it's absolute genius. There's so many like little things coming and going and moving, and then there's vocal tags. Somebody like that'll come in after, and it's the mix itself is alive. There's like a living organism that is that song while you listen, and the harmonies. And as it goes, all the little elements that have been coming in and out and ear candy and tickling and all that, as the song goes, they're all layering back in so that by the end, everything that had been there at some point is all in together, including the vocal tags, now the harmonies, now both singers are on it. And it sounds like there's strange instruments and harmonics. And I just have to point out that someone that went school for audio engineering, that's the chef's kiss. Like that might be the absolute pinnacle of a mix and production with headphones on.
It's so easy to overproduce things, especially these days, right? With samples and all the tools that are out there. It's really tough to make something that's simple, that doesn't actually have a whole lot going on, be so satisfying and have so much success and have such a connection. So I think, yeah, totally, man. I've listened to it a million times, and that sort of story and journey of a song, exactly right, of sort of jumping through the hoops that your average listener has become attuned to just listening to pop music or whatever, that ticks all those boxes, but then still has a certain je ne sais quoi to it, right? That's like there's this magical X factor that. Yeah, and I mean, certainly shouts to Wally on that one too, because he very much like was like self-produced that whole album's worth of stuff. I think basically all of his stuff. And you know, a guy like that was like, whether he had somebody mix and master separate, was in those rooms too, just making sure that every detail was perfect. So yeah, that's I love, dude. Let's not even go down the path of geeking out about audio stuff, because totally, I mean, that's like, once again, to have something that can breathe and has tons of space but still feels whole and full and unique and interesting, despite being using the same 12 pitches as anything else. And you know, no one's going to ever invent a new chord progression, but the way the sounds are designed and the way the whole thing is structured and slow dripped throughout is just like, yeah, like you said, masterful.
This episode has been brought to you by the Women in the Music Industry podcast. It's hosted by music producer Rob Wells, who has worked with global superstars like Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, and Selena Gomez. Through his 1 hour interviews, he shines a spotlight on the remarkable women who are breaking barriers and making their mark in the music industry. Some of his notable guests include Morgan Lander of the multi-million selling metal band Kitty, and Pam Shane, who co-wrote Genie in a Bottle for Christina Aguilera. If you're a fan of the Joel Martin Mastery podcast, you'll love the Women in the Music Industry podcast, which is available on all platforms. So we're an hour and 40 minutes in to a 2 hour interview, and we haven't started talking about the band's debut major label album yet. So just to give everyone a heads up, I have like 10 more pages of questions and there's 20 minutes left. So I'm going to have to like rapid fire and pick and choose just so everyone is on the same page as us. So the same year as the viral video, 2012, you guys release Volume 1 and Volume 2, which are cover albums. So there's 32 covers here. I went and listened to the entire band's discography. From those two cover albums, some of the standouts for me, my favorites were Red by Treble Charger, The Edge of Glory, Lady Gaga, Party Rock Anthem, LMFAO, and Some Nights from Fun. Uh, Man, you guys have done so many incredible covers over the years. Do you have any favorites that stand out to you? It doesn't have to be from those two cover albums, but if you have to pick your three favorite covers you've ever done.
Oh,
That's hard, man. That's like a favorite child, you know?
that's really tough for sure. You mentioned before too, getting in touch with the creator of a given song after the fact kind of thing, right? It's that shot to mind as you were mentioning that stuff just there. All those that you mentioned are pretty early days, so that definitely gets me back to like warm early days stuff. But thinking more about the wild experience that is, and how much the gatekeepers have gone away these days, where you can just put up a cover like Eye of the Tiger, for example, by Survivor, and then the top comments on that upload are the two co-writers of the song saying this is the best version of our song we've ever seen. Like, that one sticks out because that nothing feels better than that, and nothing is more kind of like verifies the efforts you put in than hearing back and getting that kind of blessing from the creator of the song like that. Let me think beyond that. Man, it's so funny how it's all such a blur.
So I just yesterday, I'm watching all your videos. I'm trying to make sure I know what I'm talking about. And I get to the Smells Like Teen Spirit video of you not only just doing it, but doing it live. And you guys crush it. I sent it to friends like, how are they this talented? This makes no sense. So I don't know. That's one that just stood out to me from yesterday is the Smells Like Teen Spirit one. And I wasn't expecting the full band after having seen somebody that I used to know where it's just you guys on the one instrument. So I didn't expect a full band to kick in and get heavy afterwards.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we like to, obviously that one guitar video is such a crucial part of most people at this point's relation to Woe, right? So we like to think about fun ways to reapproach that and kind of give the vibe of that, but task ourselves with the ability to make it more interesting and more difficult. And actually, now that you mentioned that, I think about one called it was the tune Rude by Magic that we ended up doing actually in Mike Taylor's backyard. And that was the first video that beyond the version of Red Hands that we did with the big ass guitar, which is also in the Nirvana video. We did a cover of that song when it was the biggest thing in the world, and we part of what we did in that was sample the sound of the splashing on the pool, was part of that. In addition to the big ass guitar being there, so that was a really fun one to do. And then I'll just say generally, as you mentioned, these moments where we've had to reapproach kind of how to remix our own idea with the multiple person on one guitar thing. We've got this thing called the Guiharpalele these days, where it's this crazy instrument we got a chance to design with a company called Blueberry Guitars. They're based in Montreal, but they do all the production in Bali, Indonesia. They reached out to us and they said, do you guys want to design your own instrument with us? And we said, are you sure you want to do that? Like we're going to go nuts. And they said, let's go. And we did. And we said, let's come up with a tri-neck string instrument that is part guitar, part ukulele, and part bass harp thingy that has percussion stuff stuck in it and is just kind of this crazy Frankenstein. And we pulled it off with them. They did an incredible job. And using that both for live, but also to kind of create videos with, has been a real pleasure over the years. Songs like I Don't Care, the Justin Bieber and Ed Sheeran, doing that and creating the right arrangements on that. That's one that I put together, and just kind of like doing this thing that looks so awkward and strange, and that, like, you know, your average person, if you handed it to them, would have such a hard time figuring out how to get the best use out of this thing. For us to kind of like be all chilling and just like be using this thing like it's the back of our hand, I've always enjoyed that kind of juxtaposition of it being this crazy looking instrument, but we're all just like, it's like we've been playing it for years because we have at this point. So whether it's those one-off covers like I mentioned there with I Don't Care, or something that I think we did a couple of years back, which was this medley of, we called it the Gee Harp medley. It was, and we did it live for a bunch of years. Was this kind of like, we started off by playing ding, 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 ding. It's playing something I used to know, and then completely going off in 100 different directions with it and using a bunch of different songs. Those are really fun to put together as well, and they take a long time and they're challenging, but it's the best feeling, especially with our proprietary instrument in the mix, to be able to do that and put that in a time capsule in video form. But then to just, you know, we just went out 2 years in a row with our friend Lindsay Sterling in the US. She's a big deal down there. She's selling amphitheaters everywhere she goes, and it was a pleasure to be out with her and to get that reaction every night from people who maybe had heard of us, maybe hadn't, and to end our show with this Gee Harp-a-lele moment. And just like it, at a certain point in touring, after 10, 20, 30 shows, it becomes exclusively about how is the audience receiving this. So to really kind of see those reactions to it was always a great thing. One more I'll mention is the Beatles medley. That was a labor of true love for years. It was on the back burner and something that we chipped away at for literally years, 4 years probably, that we finally got to a spot that kind of met our standard of excellence. And we got to shoot it in this little pub in like a reggae pub in Hamilton, Ontario. And we heard back from Paul McCartney and his daughter on that one and stuff. And, like, you know, we got a chance to send a video message off to Ringo after that, because he had expressed interest and stuff. So, like, again, those full circle moments, we'll never take those for granted. We'll always remember those as a crazy portrait of the state of the industry and the state of the world these days. That what used to be, once again, back to that era when Led Zeppelin was one of the 10 biggest bands in the world, and every single person in the world knew them, and they were like untouchable, unreachable. Now it's like, that doesn't exist anymore. You're going to put up a video, and if it's good enough and interesting enough and cool enough, the original person is going to see that and be able to share their thoughts on that with you.
So I'm a big fan of Magic, and I had guitarist and keyboard player Mark Pelly on 3 interviews ago. That was my interview, and man, we talked about Rude. That single sold 12.4 million copies. It's actually on the list of the best-selling singles of all time, which is wild again for another GTA band. And you just talked about, you know, with social media, it's you can actually reach out to the actual artists themselves sometimes. And this wouldn't be a legit walk off the earth interview if I didn't have some kind words sent in from the big boss man, from the head honcho, from vocalist and frontman Gianni Luminati Nicasio. So this is from Johnny. He says, Joel is basically my human Google / chat GPT. If I need to know anything, music, history, stock trends, obscure 90s pop culture, or where to get the cheapest organic blueberries, he's my guy. I swear, he's like an elephant bot hybrid. He remembers everything and somehow always has the answer. He's my first call when I need to bounce an idea off someone, or when I just need to know if oat milk causes breast growth in men. Oh, and he's all right on the drums, I guess. That's from Johnny.
That is, I don't even know what to say. That was special. Wow. That's wonderful. I love that you did that, man. And that's hey, that's kind words from a guy that I look up to a huge amount, like who, like I said, beyond everything else, music in and music out, just as a true mentor in how to approach and how to be undeniable in business. Certainly something that I'm drawing from a lot these days too, working on this new venture of mine. Gotta say, love you, G. That's great words. And I so love, man, that you reached out to G, and shout out Seamus as well. I feel like I didn't give enough love to Seamus there as another guy who I think he did finish Humber, but you know his brother obviously is the frontman of the Sheepdogs, and at a certain point in their story, Seamus. I think you just gave him the call and said, "Dude, come on in here. Like we want you in." And like that's been a magical thing for them and for him. And nothing but love and respect for the guy. And like I said, I celebrate so hard the stories of folks that I went to school with, getting a chance to really do it and still do it this many years on because it's not easy. And school is this weird time warp trip out where you think what you're doing in the walls of music school is going to be the best thing for your career, but by and large, I think that's actually not the case. Again, in my experience, I like to caveat that every time because people go there and they get great things out of it and they're doing great things now. But I had an experience that I'm sure a good amount of people out there would probably echo if they did the same thing or maybe have had the same experience. So I like to share that.
So you guys signed with Columbia Records in 2012. You released the four-song EP. In 20 same 2012 you released the major label album. It stands for Realize Every Victory Outright, which is like a motto for the band. So is it pronounced Revo, like revolution, or
Revo.
Revo? That's I'm like, okay, I have a 50% chance here. I'm probably gonna get it wrong. So Revo.
Revo.
Revo is how you pronounce it. Okay. So you guys released the album, four singles, Somebody That I Used to Know, Red Hands, Gang of Rhythm, and Shake. The album debuts in the top 10. It goes gold in Canada. Somebody That I Used to Know went platinum, top 10 on the Dutch charts. Red Hands goes double platinum, top 10 hit in Canada. It's the seventh most played song of the year on Billboard's US Adult Alternative Songs. That's a huge deal now in the US. So my question is, I wanted to kind of lay out all the success right off the bat of that album. And then my question is, do you remember receiving the phone calls for those different successes? The gold album, the platinum this, the multi-platinum that. Do you remember receiving those phone calls?
Yeah, I think realistically it would have been like more emails, right? And
Oh,
definitely
so old school.
I know, yeah, yeah. But for sure, man, like and it's again, there's a certain like decoupling that happens or like loss of what would otherwise allow one to absorb the impact of something like that. That is, again, especially in those earlier years, like so many things happening at once where that otherwise would have stopped us all in our tracks. And it's like, holy shit, that's amazing. We also are working on 12 different projects right now and have to fly out tomorrow morning. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where I think that news was part of a whole bunch of other really exciting stuff as well at that time. Of course, those things are like, once again, that 12-year-old version of myself or whatever age that wanted to be Blink 182 or slightly older in the Mars Volta would have just lost his mind to. And not that I didn't, but how wild is it to be able to say so fortunately that like those were things that fell in the midst of other big successes and working with huge brands and getting to go on huge tours and go and do wild stuff and work with artists we never thought we'd get to work with and everything. Like it's all part of this unbelievable, immeasurable scope of this thing that we've had a chance to do all these years at this point. So that's kind of a non-answer, but that's what came to mind there is that like, yes, of course it's incredible and insane that those achievements have happened. I think it's tough to sit with those when you're still on the grind and you're still so motivated and you still want to work so hard because I think even something like that still slots into the category of like, that's great. That was then. What's next? What's coming up next? What's going on now? How do we hear news like that and keep grinding so that we can create more news like that, you know?
So between 2013 and 2014, on the strength of that album, you guys get nominated for 5 Juno Awards. So Breakthrough Group of the Year, Video of the Year, Group of the Year, Pop Album of the Year, Juno Fan Choice Award. And there's two-part question. So number one, the first five nominations, what did it mean to you to have your country, it's Canada's Grammys, to have your country acknowledge your hard work and your musical talent? And then so those are five nominations, but no wins on the first five, which is awesome and then a little heartbreaking. But then redemption comes a few years later when you get nominated for three more and you win the illustrious group of the year. I mean, of all the ones you could win, that's probably, I would think that would be up there as the best because that's an overall thing for the year. And that year, the other nominees were Metric, 3 Days Grace, Mariana's Trench, and Headley. So not a weak category by any stretch of the imagination. So the questions are, what did it mean to you to get the first nominations? And then what did it mean to you years later to get the actual win? And now, as I said in the intro, two-time Juno Award-winning band, that you have that forever. So what does that mean?
Yeah, man. Obviously, a huge deal as a Canadian musician to get acknowledgement from Karis and the Junos. Um, yeah, I think again, like that first set of nominations and that not happening. Of course, a bummer, right? But not something that I don't think we've any of us have ever assigned too much pressure and concern with winning an award or not. It's one of those things. People say this a lot. I realize, like, it's nice to have, but we're not going to change anything about how hard we're working and what we're working toward if we don't get that right. I will say though, being out with Mariana's Trench over the course of the Junos, we did a full cross country arena tour with them, and we were sitting beside them after just playing like the Calgary, like the Saddle Dome the night before, sitting there in Calgary at the Junos as we're both up for the same award in that category and us getting a chance to do it. We never really we never really had any sort of direct combo about it, but there was some congratulations that may or may not have been all the way genuine. I don't know. But that was obviously a huge moment just to get up there and again, right? Any of these moments that pull us out, that force us to press pause for a second, step back and think about what this is all created and the sort of things we've accomplished and the millions of things we've done that are like, it's otherwise really tough to track until we're having a conversation like we are right now, or we win an award and have to stand up there in front of the whole country and talk about how grateful we are. Super special feeling. I will say again as well though, like I know there's people who treat that as like a be all end all, or like have been really upset in past about not getting nominations or not getting wins. And it's like, if you can build an audience these days and you have an audience that's going to follow you wherever you go and support whatever you want to do, awards should be so secondary to that, right? It's like, yes, of course it's great. And it's a great way to track things. And it's a nice kind of category to slot into, but like nothing is a greater award than having an engaged audience who cares about you and knows that you care about them. Like that is the single most valuable thing that I think any artist could have these days, any brand really. If you can build an audience, that's really, people call it a moat in tech and stuff, right? If you have a product, what's your moat? What's preventing others from coming in there? The most bulletproof moat is an engaged community that feels like they've been a part of your success and that you're as emotionally tied to them as they are to you.
I remember seeing Sting get up and receive an award, I think a Grammy, and his speech was saying music is its own reward. Like the Grammy is nice, thanks, but regardless of this, the music that I made itself is what's most important. So that came to mind when you talked about that. What's cool about Mariana's Trench, so Josh Ramsey, the singer, he co-wrote "Call Me Maybe" for Carly Rae Jepsen. That song went on to sell over 20 million copies globally. It's the single best-selling single of the 21st century by a female solo artist. And random story, back, I don't know, 18 years ago, I was a finalist on Canadian Idol, and Carly Rae Jepsen was the final female finalist the year I was on. So I have a random connection with Carly Rae. So to see her after that have two gold albums in Canada, she's big just here-ish, and then that song blows up globally. It's again the staying power of someone that's committed to their craft regardless of what is going on around there. So just wanted to point out a random Mariana's Trench thing.
That's a great man. Yeah, Josh is the man. Incredible songwriter, unbelievable singer. Like truly, like hearing that guy do vocal warm ups is like a out of body experience.
He's like the Mariah Carey of male singers, is how I see it. Most guys can't do the runs though. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Carly Rae. I mean, you mentioned staying power. Like I think she's bigger than ever in territories like Asia and stuff right now. Like it's really, you got to appreciate the machine behind her, and just the value of having a big song that once again like the era that song was, I think is tied to so many people's certain thoughts and certain, whether it's a party or a breakup, whatever it is, people have this emotional connection to that, a song like that, and they will follow an artist like that for a long time. I remember like we did something, I think it was in Boston years back, that it was a bill we were on with Panic at the Disco was also on it. And just seeing girls in the crowd who clearly were those same girls that got into them when they were 13, 14 years old, now as like 30-year-olds, but being going through all the same motions and the same body language as a screaming young teenage girl, it was like, wow, the power of music. Just a funny example of that, right? Where it's like they're singing these songs that transport them back to this early formative part of their life, and here they are now, probably with kids and jobs and the whole thing, but they're there throwing all that away and just going for it and reliving that moment and having that nostalgia. And it's like it's so special, man. Nothing else can really achieve that or accomplish that in the same way, I don't think.
I remember back in the MySpace days, I would check the MySpace charts every day to see if my band's showing up there somewhere. And every day for years, the top two artists were these unsigned artists, Drake and Panic at the Disco. And no, every day for the lifetime of MySpace, I don't know, 6 years, I checked the charts. Where's my band? No, 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 no. Drake and Panic at the Disco. And then you see them go on to actual outside of MySpace global success. So that's again, I have all these. That's why I love talking to other musicians because you say something and it triggers a memory that I haven't thought about in 20 years, and it's fun to relive those moments. So in 2015, you guys release your next album, Sing It All Away. Three singles: Rule the World, Home Will Go, and Hold on the Break. Rule the World goes platinum. I have so many questions about this album. I guess what I would ask is for Home Will Go, there's the version on the album, which is like a band version, and then there's a version that's like a remix on the Steve Aoki album, which is a massive album. It went to number 2 on the Billboard dance charts. I guess my question is, was it that you guys had the song that is full band like your album, he liked it, he remixed it, or was it his version, the actual song, and then you guys made a full band version of it afterwards?
Yeah, we had the song. We had the song, and we were in touch with him on a couple of things. We're actually working on something new with him right now. But we were in touch with him on that, and yeah, it just came to be the right thing. And him and his team created that version of it, and we had a chance. We were out in Sacramento with him. G and Sarah also flew down to Ultra to do it in Ultra Miami one year with him. But yeah, he really just enjoyed. We were sending stuff back and forth, and he really enjoyed that one and saw opportunity to kind of create a cool remix, and the rest is history there. Yeah, that was a really cool thing. And we're now, probably 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, we're now working on a new thing with him.
So I definitely wanted to touch on this. Earlier, we mentioned Mike Taylor, Beard Guy, who was in the viral music video. So on December 30th, 2018, you guys announced that he had passed away at just 51 years old. You guys organized a free memorial and tribute concert to celebrate his life and legacy. Uh, there were Scott Hellman came out, you've mentioned before, members of Bare Naked Ladies. For myself and the listeners that didn't know him like you knew him, what can you tell us about him, about that concert, and if you have any favorite memories of your time with him?
The best thing about MT was that, like, it's funny because his identity as Beard Guy, the character in Woad, is that he was like very stoic and didn't say much and was just this like epic dude just by optics. The reality is that he was a total chatterbox and a total goofball who was just always saying the weirdest, most random, silly stuff. And that more than anything is what sticks out. And I think certainly hope he would be happy with what we put together, both with that memorial concert, but also just in the way that the following 2 years, we had a big decision to make right after he passed because we had dates on the calendar and we were like, are we doing these or not? We decided to, with the blessing of his lovely mother and his family, we decided to move forward and carry him with us. And for the 2 years of worth of live show following that, we had this moment where he used to play Bohemian Rhapsody. We would all leave the stage and he would have this epic moment where he would just rip Bohemian Rhapsody on the piano and we'd come in at the end and jam it out. We were able to take soundboard recordings of him doing that and create a version where it was kind of like a tribute version where we would show on video screens him performing it, and have his actual performed audio playing through, and then we would still come back at the end and rock it out as a tribute to him. So we absolutely kept him with us as we continue to all these years. But just honestly, just the how much of a goofball he was, and his just totally sarcastic and just a fun loving guy. Another guy who did big things in business, had a freighting company based in Burlington here that had done very well, and music to him was like the cherry on the cake of his already amazing, highly accomplished life. He had quite a thing going, and how sad for him to lose his life so early. We know he had respiratory issues and undiagnosed sleep apnea that used to plague him actually on the tour bus and made it really hard for him to go on the bus. And we respected his family this whole time in terms of not prying beyond that, but we know that that's what it was rooted in. Uh, yeah, love the guy so much, and miss the guy, and just a total goofball, and just, like, yeah, a sweet man, and truly, I think someone that we continue to try to carry with us, and think about what would MT do when we're making decisions and putting together new shows and the whole thing.
That's a nice tribute to him. So in 2019, you guys released the album Here We Go. There's a platinum single in there, I'll Be There. And then in 2020, you guys released The Journey Starts Here, which is the theme song to Pokemon Journey. Uh, Man, there's so much to talk about. 2021, you released the album Meet You There, four more singles. One of the singles has the song Love You Right, which features Lucas Graham of 7 Years fame. That's a 2 billion stream song. Man, that song, that's another one of those viral things that took off. My question is, did it feel cathartic to release something positive during such a negative and uncertain time during the pandemic when you released the album Meet You There?
I will say we didn't lead with this a lot while the pandemic was still happening, but we did very well during the pandemic because that was a moment I think for any artist and band that wasn't previously prioritizing all things social media. Holy shit, was that a moment of, wait a minute, we can't go out and do anything in person. We better triple down, quadruple down on our online output. For us, we've been doing that forever, right? So again, it was a tough time in a lot of other ways, and mentally it was so strange and the whole thing. And of course, not getting a chance to go out and perform in person was really tough. But what happened with us is were met with an influx of brand deals and corporate gigs that otherwise would have looked like us jumping on a plane on Friday, going out to the States or somewhere, on playing on Saturday, coming back on Sunday. That all turned into us either pre-taping stuff or doing live streams out of B-Town Sound, the studio that I mentioned. And we did very well with that. So the album just kind of came as a result of us sort of continuing all the things that we do throughout that year and having a chance to get that out there. I will say though, like, back to MT and everything, and certainly losing my mom a week later, we wrote a song actually that we ended up titling Mike's Song, directly about, we essentially wrote our catharsis there and wrote our way through such a tough time. And I was pulling deeply from, I'll never forget being in the room with G and Sarah on that one, writing that. And as like, it was all happening. And for the music video, that one, we had a chance to work with Music Counts here in Canada, our buddy Larry Davidson at Daddario Canada, and actually identify some schools and some kids who had shown musical proclivity and musical interest who otherwise wouldn't have had access to the instruments or anything like that, and surprise them in their homes, at their schools, with instruments as kind of like a thing that, like, MT was a big music education guy and was part of Music Counts and everything. So that was a wonderful moment for us to be able to kind of, have his spirit with us and go and do something that he totally would have done and would have loved to be a part of.
So between 2021 and 2024, you guys released Romeo Eats volumes 1, 2, and 3, as well as One Appetito. We have a fan question sent in. This is from Mike Lalonde, who's a local Ottawa artist named Petty Cash. And his question is, are there any new Romeo tunes coming? Which I find funny because you've released 4 albums in 4 years. And, but that's what you want. You want a fan that's like insatiable appetite for new music. So the question is there any new Romeo tunes coming? And to back that up, for our listeners that aren't familiar, what is Romeo Eats?
Romeo Eats is something that G started with his youngest son, Romeo, when Romeo was like super young. Like, you can go all the way back to Romeo being, I think, like 2 or 3 years old in the early ones, where they discovered early on, in contrast to their 2 older boys, Georgie and Luigi, that Romeo was just like a garburator. Like, anything they threw at him, he would just devour. So G has a pretty diverse palette, and I guess he saw himself in Romy and saw a fun opportunity for them to create some fun stuff to look back on years down the road together, and basically just having Romy try new and strange foods and prepare new and strange foods kind of thing. So that was what it was. And initially it really didn't kind of like find the right audience, but something happened over these years where Romeo's channel is now in the millions of subscribers, and it's a whole thing of its own, and it's done great. And then the music obviously naturally followed that, just based on who we are and what we do. And that winding up getting its own Juno nominations and wins and stuff has been a crazy thing. And to answer the fan question, I think I'm not sure. There's definitely a few songs in the can that have yet to see the light of day, but since Romeo and his two brothers have had their successes with Illuminati Sons now, they had a huge moment, with My Stupid Heart, where that kind of thrust them onto the global stage, and now they actually have their own band going, and they've just released a new original single. And for the last couple of years, they've been coming on the road with us and performing, 3 or 4 songs a set with us. They got their own thing going on now, so I think Romy is he's the front man of Lumi's Sons, so that's his priority now. But I'm sure he and G will continue to do that. G is never going to not be the foodie that he is, and I don't think Romeo is going to stop either. So I know they're really trying to focus on giving the boys every chance at success right now with that, because they've already had so much success for such a young group of dudes, and look at who their parents are, right? So it's that's been really cool to see. And the little moments that I've had to introduce music to my kid's life and have do little videos with him, kind of romping around, have been really fun too.
And so two things. One, man, the musical genes are strong in that family. And two, I think your son's starting to get into audio stuff. He's starting to react to different sounds.
Definitely, yeah, yeah. Probably my most fun thing about having a little version of myself now is to like try to trip him out with little weird things, whether it's putting the headphones on him and showing him stuff with cool panning, or like, yeah, you might have seen that video with the water bottle where I was making weird little kind of pitch bendy sounds. And he's just a real person now. He's just like, he's a year and a half now, and he's starting to really react and be able to kind of respond in his own little way to like what he likes and those sorts of things. Same with like, I got a hold of these toy drum sets from Walmart that are just like junk, but I put together kind of like a Franken kit here over in his playroom over there, and did something where I played along to our latest single. And he just happened to come in at the right time and add his own little touch and everything like that. And you can't plan that, nor would I want to. I will definitely not be pushing my kid into music. If he winds up taking a natural, liking toward it and wanting to really go deep with it, we're going to support the hell out of that. But knowing the wealth of challenges that lie in any prospective musician's life, if he wants to go the tech route or any other route, we are more than happy with that too. Sarah used to joke a lot about how all the boys were going to become dentists, and that was it. Dentist only, no music for you. And let's go tried and true, and nice high paying career path without all the ups and downs of being a musician. But turns out the boys actually like music a lot. So there we go.
They call that the evil gene, where you love music. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't avoid it. You're called to that career. You're drawn to music. It's referred to as the evil gene amongst musicians. Do you ever get tempted to just slowly drop a pair of headphones playing Dark Side of the Moon for your son? See what happens?
Oh
Take
man.
him to a whole new universe?
Totally. I've showed him some of my favorite stuff. I'm really into like earthy electronic that has like really unique sounds and sound design, like groups like Odessa, if you know that who they are, or Flume. Really just kind of unique stuff. Really, like I'm obsessed with the kind of middle ground of organic textures that are like so inherently human feeling, and then like basically weird sounds that I've never even heard before, kind of thing. And Flume likes to say that nobody's ever going to invent a new chord progression, but the sounds that they use to get that chord progression across, those can always be new, kind of thing. So some of my favorite stuff, haven't got to Dark Side yet, but some of my favorite stuff I've had a chance to pop on, and just so cool to see. I mean, it's like I'm more of a cliche every day talking about my kid, because just seeing him grow and seeing him react to things in this pure way as a brand new human experiencing something for the first time. Like, there's pressure there, big pressure, but it's, again, like anything else, try not to overthink it, go with the flow. And I think we're doing a pretty good job so far. And I just can't wait to lay more tools out in front of him, whether they resonate with him or not, to at least provide the tools to him based on this life that I've been fortunate to have. And just, drop an instrument here, drop an instrument there. We just got a little karaoke rig for him that has some voice effects on it. See how he likes that stuff. And if he starts to lean into any one thing, we're going to support the hell out of that, like I said.
You have the perfect drum kit for him from the Dua Lipa cover you did over Zoom. You got right on the kitchen counter, you got pots and pans and Tupperware containers. You already have his drum kit.
Go. that's, I mean, that's kind of what we've built a brand around too, right? It's just like grabbing literally whatever's in the kitchen sink and going for it. So yeah, that's something that I don't want to ever lose touch of, especially with just doing fun experimentation stuff with him and just trying to get him thinking creatively at a young age.
When you get home and you're with your partner and your son, are you a rock star or some schmuck that takes out the garbage?
Absolutely, the second one. Nobody cares that, you know what I mean. These folks don't care at all that I have done some of the cool things I've done, which I wouldn't want them to. It's that's the only way to go. I mean, it's I really try to pride myself on for as much as some people might think it's a huge thing and it's a special thing and wow, you know, the allure of it all. I think we're all just humans at the end of the day. And like I was saying before, I think that's been actually quite a big part of Wote's ongoing success is that we try to just be our real selves and try to just kind of be who we are and not put on any sort of extra front or show of things. And I really do believe that's continued to be one of our staying points. So yeah.
So you mentioned loving Flume. Is that's Never Be Like You featuring Kai? That's Flume. So funny story. I went to school for audio engineering as well as entertainment business management. And in 2010, there's another student in my classes, and that was Kai. So her name's Alessia. She was just, there's the musicians that are always in bands and playing, and then there's the quiet musicians that aren't really playing, but they're just way more talented than the rest of us. Like it seems like almost naturally.
Yep.
And yeah, she wasn't even performing, and then suddenly she had a song that was in a First Choice Haircutters commercial. So she got, suddenly there's this theme song that she wrote, and from there, she's featured on a Skrillex hit. She's featured on Flume. Flume's hit is multi-platinum, went to number one a bunch of places, nominated for 2 Grammys. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I have a picture of her and I and her sister and another friend at the Mod Club at like a random dance night. And it's the people that talent isn't enough. You need talent as like a baseline, but it's the passion, the hard work. You need a little bit of luck for everything to fall in place. But just a random story about Kai. So
That's really cool, man. Yeah, I know she's from the GTA somewhere, right? I believe.
I think she was Burlington as well. She was GTA for sure.
Yeah, so what a cool thing to see. And like, yeah, once again, you got to celebrate every bit of Canadian talent like that. And yeah, that was definitely Flume's most mainstream success. Like that made it up like the Hot 100. I think like he was on there for a bit with that, and obviously ended up winning electronic album of the year that year at the Grammys and stuff. And just really cool to see his whole thing and how much I think almost in like kind of like a Goche echoing way, getting all that mainstream attention from that. Like he's kind of since his stuff since has like he released a couple things that were like way left of center after that, which have gone on to be some of his kind of most revered things. Just a funny little thing where it's like these artists get the big limelight on, and it's like they jump through those hoops for a bit, and then that creates some sort of other part of them that wants to come out and do weird stuff again. And it's like he's my favorite, man. I literally think he's like the Mozart of our generation, purely in terms of his ability to create sounds that are unlike anything that anyone's ever heard before. Like it's that is a really tough thing to accomplish. And there's a lot of people out there that are making way easier money by giving people repackaged versions of the same thing they've already heard a million times. But to be, and he's like the guy too. Like it's like, everyone has just so much respect for the guy because he basically has created his own genre based on how he's been able to approach the whole thing. So I just get like endless inspiration from him. And like I said, Odessa as well. Odessa, you might have seen him, man. Odessa did, because Severance is very much a Washington State story. Bellingham is where Dan Erickson, the creator, is from. Also happens to be where the founding members of Odessa went to college alongside same years the founding members of Death Cab for Cutie, all from Bellingham. So
Ben Gibbard and all those guys.
yeah. So Dan clearly at some point along the way of them realizing that season 2 was going to be a big deal and they were going to lean hard into the marketing of it, hit up Odessa and was like, can you guys create what do they call it? Music to refine to. Is this mixtape they put together? And it's this, I think they did like 25 minutes of original music, but they permutated it over an 8-hour mix to symbolize, hey, listen to this on your 8-hour workday kind of thing. So
the severed shift.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
So if you haven't heard that, I know it officially comes out tomorrow, but they released it on YouTube. It's been out for a while, and like when I get in the car, I'm like 7.5 hours in finally, but I just like I'll let it keep going because I love those guys, man. Ah.
We couldn't not come back to Severance at some point over 2 hours, right? I think we did pretty good, an hour and a half between both times talking about Severance. For Flume, I'm gonna have to start listening to Flume based on you know, your hyping of it because I only know Never Be Like You. And then there was a Tove Lo featured single that was amazing as well. Those are, I guess, the two biggest hits. That's what I'm familiar with. And both those songs are awesome. So you'll have to let me know which album to check out for Flume.
So that album right there, Skin, that's the one that got the Grammy.
That's the purple one, right? There's like a flower or
That
something on it.
with the Foxglove flower, yeah. There's no better place to start than there because yeah, those two big songs came off that, but you do get there's certain tunes on there where you do get a glimpse of his kind of like more crazy sound designer side. And then he released two companion EPs in support of Skin that essentially were songs that didn't make the main album, but that he still wanted to push out there. So the Skin Companion EP 1 and Skin Companion EP 2 are both absolutely must listens. The one I was talking about that was really experimental for him that actually solidified and brought in a bunch of new fans. It's called Hi, This Is Flume. It's essentially like a mixtape approach. It's basically like a through composed composition that is split up into tracks, but has some really weird, really abrasive, really jarring stuff going on in it. That's just like legendary status. Like yeah, you just gotta. It's hard to explain. This is where words fail and music comes in because like it's literally otherworldly some of the stuff the guy can do, and it's like he's just such an inspiration, man.
Are you cool if we just rapid fire through a few more questions? So I'll just pop them out, quick answers, and we'll wrap everything up with a nice bow. So in 2023, you released the album Stand By You. You guys had 7 singles from that album. Two of the big ones are My Stupid Heart, and my favorite was Bet On Me. And I just want to say that I remember the first time hearing Bet On Me, I was getting in my car, I'm in the underground parking, and I'm about to start playing music on Spotify, and Bet On Me came up as the featured single of the day, something like that. And I'm like, oh, Walk Off the Earth. Okay. So I play it and I remember like the moments as I'm driving. And when that came on, instantly I'm like, that's a hit. Like that sounds like a delicious pop hit to me. So I just want to put that out there. And then for My Stupid Heart, that's the band's most popular song on Spotify. It has 86 million plays. And that's not even the kids version that has, I don't know, 25 or 35 million plays. Why do you think people love that song so much?
I don't know, man. I think other than it just being an earworm and having just kind of like this familiarity, like I think some of the best songs are ones that give you nostalgia. We've been talking a lot about these moments where that are so tied to people's listening, like your road trip you mentioned, right? And people's tied to these moments where they discovered certain music. I think it's really special when you hear a song for the first time and it gives you this nostalgia feeling where you're nostalgic about a moment that may have never actually occurred. There's some sort of special kind of witchcraft and wizardry happening there that allows that to happen. And I think that's plain and simple is like just like the plain and simple of us probably appealing to a wide audience because we just kind of come across as normal people. I think there's something to our biggest successes have had a strong presence of that sort of naturalness and sort of just like here's this thing that we liked that was hooky to us that we thought people might enjoy as well. And holy shit, it wound up being our biggest thing to date. Once again, to tie it all back as well, to not overthinking it, right? And being like, this is something good. Let's try to not overproduce it. Let's do what's called underdubbing, where when we're producing a song, there's a million tracks in. We then go in specifically with the knife to try to remove as much as possible to let the song breathe as much as possible. But yeah, that song was just a piece of magic. And obviously the boys version of it took it to a whole nother place with this cute cover version that they put together. And that created this like insane viral moment that obviously added more jet fuel to the original song and has fully launched a career for the boys as well.
Over the last couple months, you guys have released 2 new singles. So there's Please Don't Go and On the Road Again. It's been a couple years since the last full-length Walk Off the Earth album. Does that mean there's a new album possibly in the works?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think it's, these days it's more about, I think, you do what's called waterfall releasing, where you mentioned 7 singles off the last record. Really, that's just a matter of every time we want to drop a single, which usually we're doing every 6 to 8 weeks, to be honest, these days. You release it so that it becomes that next updated version of that ongoing waterfall release on Spotify, on Apple, wherever you want. Um, so that's we're at a point now where we're releasing stuff so regularly where we'll let that process take place, and then once we hit that magic number around 10, we'll essentially say, these songs that have already been released as singles and had their own opportunities, we're now going to re-release these bundled as an actual dedicated album with probably a couple tunes that weren't deemed singles in the mix as well. So definitely have a new album coming, this, if not this year, then next.
So to the shock of Walk Off the Earth fans around the world on April 1st, there was a name change. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're still reeling with that. It's been tough dealing with the Flat Earth Society. They're really, their legal bench is deep. So, we went back and forth for a while, and after about 10 million bucks in legal fees, we decided to say, guys, we can't keep spending this money. And Walk the Dog was actually Johnny's original idea for the band's name, which was pushed back on by his then bandmates and wound them up in a spot where, what's the feeling that you want this music to provide? You want to put the headphones on and drift away from the planet and walk off the earth kind of thing. Obviously, it was a joke, but that Walk the Dog was G's first idea as a name of the band. And something that comes up pretty regularly, actually, in like our VIPs and stuff, like about the etymology of the band name and such.
Some fans were saying like it should be Walk Off the Dog. Like people are saying what it should be, which is cool. Is
I,
it
I
true?
I hit back to that with a comment. I said, guys, what the hell? I thought we were going with Run on the Moon, and people like that a lot. I was gonna say Walk the Moon, but that might be a little too close to home.
Yeah. Uh, so the actual term "Walk Off the Earth," I heard that's a baseball term. Is that an actual thing? Are you aware of this?
I am not. I know that a walk off is certainly a baseball term, but a walk off the earth, I'm not. I didn't
So
know.
I know nothing about baseball. I'm a hockey fan and a UFC fan. And when I was looking into it, what came up for Walk Off the Earth is there's the walk off, but apparently if it's the walk off that like wins the game itself, it's like you walk off the earth because you never come back.
Really?
Something like that.
Well,
Yeah.
I've never heard that, and I don't think my bandmates have ever heard that. But I am going to look into that now, because if that's the case, we should be playing that up a little more. We actually were set to, going back to like certain drawbacks of COVID. One of only a few that we had to deal with was we were slated to perform the anthem at the All-Star game or the World Series down in Los Angeles, and we were ready to go because they had seen. I don't know if you've seen. We did we went down to Oakland, California, and did the Canadian anthem back when the Raptors ended up winning the chip that year, and all that stuff. Done a few of those moments over the years. We were going to go and do that. Didn't get a chance to do it, but man, if that's the case, we'll have to find a fun way to play that up.
You'll have to research to see if that's a real thing. That's what came up when I was like, how did, is there a story behind the band name? That's what it gave me. So maybe it has nothing to do with the band and it's actually a baseball term, or maybe it's not even a popular baseball term. But
Yeah.
that's what I found during my digging. Let's quickly talk about you guys in the live world, touring, all that stuff. So you guys have two solo shows coming up and you have two festival dates coming up. They can go to the band's website to get the details, to get the lineups for the festivals, to buy tickets. If our listeners right now buy a ticket to go to one of these four shows, what can they expect from a Walk Off the Earth concert?
Awesome. Yeah. They can expect a lot of stuff they've probably never seen before unless they've been to a Woat show. We do a lot of kind of things that are atypical, and really to tie it all the way back to when I first played a show with Woat, when I wasn't even in Woat back in the Guelph, Ontario ska thaw days. We're always coming up with new and weird ways to like create. When you go see a movie and there's a moment in that movie where you just can't, like, you're walking out of the theater, you're texting your friend, and you're like, I can't believe I just saw Top Gun. I can't believe you saw this. We're always thinking about what can we provide beyond that kind of standard concert experience to wow people. So whether it's the harpalele or whether it's a weird, we had this thing called literally called just a table for years, where they had a bunch of random stuff that we just built and put together with a bunch of weird instruments on it. And we've always done these kind of strange medleys and everything like that, right? So lots of medleys, lots of weird things, lots of playing instruments in incorrect ways, lots of playing strange instruments that you probably never heard of, like the saxo didge is one of our current favorites, is this saxophone shaped didgeridoo that we like a lot and have done some fun stuff with. Definitely just a lot of unexpected stuff, in addition to probably a bunch of tunes that if you didn't know Woat otherwise, you're going to be like, oh, that's them kind of thing. Because I think at this point, this many years deep, we've definitely got that going for us with like, oh, that tune or that tune, you know, it's these guys, cool. So just having a ton of fun live and trying to really, as always, evoke the spirit and the fun of the videos that have you know put us in this whole position, but take it one step further with the live show, and lots of audience involvement, lots of chanting back and forth, and lots of cool stuff that way. We give a ukulele away to the most excited and extroverted audience member at every show. We've been doing that this entire stretch. We've given away, you know, hundreds, probably close to thousands of ukuleles. So just nonstop fun for the whole family. Like I said before, literally from babies to grandparents. We've always had feedback that's like, you know, the young person thing, of course, but like, you know, on the older person thing where it's like, you know, I haven't been to a concert in 30 years, or I've never been to a concert, but something about you guys, you know, we've always, for some reason, had this certain magic approach to people where we received responses like that. And that continues right up to this day. And, you know, it's funny just to people tell us, like, I just spent half the show looking around at the audience and seeing all these different groups of people having their own special moments, you know, to these songs, but these people that are truly from all walks of life and all ages. So it's on one hand, it's a bit of a marketing nightmare sometimes because we don't kind of slot cleanly into one space. But on the other hand, it's like what's allowed us to, I think, sustain this long and also just like continue to reach new generations of people.
Yeah, when you make a Facebook paid ad and it's like, okay, what's the age range? And you're like, okay,
Oh.
I gotta leave it all. You know, male or female, I gotta leave it all. You know, where do you want to target it? Well, I gotta do the world. You know, it's tough to market as Walk Off the Earth.
Big time. Big time.
So there's an official Walk Off the Earth fan group on Facebook. It has over 30,000 members, which is bananas. And there's a question that comes from that group. This is from Braden Kelly. Three-part question. What is your go-to snack while on tour? What is your favorite venue to play? And what advice would you give someone just starting out in the music industry?
Those are all great questions. Tour snack. We keep it really healthy. It's kind of crazy. Like it's like there's literally no junk food.
The anti-rock stars.
Yeah, yeah. Like we're talking like raw. Mine would be like raw nuts, for example. Like that's the most I would do, kind of thing. Or like, you know, kombucha is in there in the mix, like green juices and stuff like that. That's like the extent.
This is the most embarrassing part of the interview. I'm just joking. That's how you guys have longevity, is because you're not like killing yourselves out there.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. G and Sarah, more than myself, are like health food nuts. So I've actually reaped the rewards of that over these years for sure. That's a good question. There was advice for
favorite venue.
Favorite venue. That is so tough, man. For some reason, I always default to the UK. There's something about the UK and UK audiences that is just like hard to pinpoint why it's such a great place. But like shows at like Royal Albert Hall, for example, we sold that one out, and that was unbelievable. Getting a chance to play at the O2 Arena, right, in London was really special. Even years back, playing Roundhouse, which is really unique, like old Shakespearean style theater, where more often than not, the group will set up right in the middle and have people, you know, in the round. Those always come to mind. Like they're special. Europe, obviously, too. It goes without saying. Like there's incredible venues like L'Olympia in Paris is unbelievable.
I would assume Red Rocks is like,
of course, man.
Just, you know, I remember seeing a Incubus live at Red Rocks DVD, and it just feels like there's a certain thickness, like an atmosphere to that feels like it's nowhere else on the planet.
That goes into the category of just like purely surreal. Like there's I remember when we headlined Red Rocks and Marshall was there and said something like, it was in between songs, or it was, I think actually when the Mike Taylor tribute was rolling, and he just put his arm around me. He was like, "Can you believe this, dude?" And I was like, I didn't even want to respond, because I was like, I'm just trying to do my job right now. I'll think about how wild this is after, but man, totally that. Venues like the Sydney Opera House, getting a chance to play Budweiser Stage in Toronto, what used to be Molson Amphitheater here in Toronto, venues like the ACC in Toronto as well, venues that either just have that acclaim on a global stage, or venues in the GTA that we all grew up going to see our favorite groups at, and getting a chance to hit those stages now is like totally surreal, and something that I think will always be a huge highlight, and thing that we were like, holy shit, we really got to do that.
Can you share just a little bit of information about the music app that you guys are working on, so that our listeners know why they should go check it out? Is this an app that's available already for people to download?
Still in development. My brother, who spent north of a decade down in San Francisco working in tech startups, recently moved home at a time where, coming off of a really busy last year in touring for Woe, really a really busy last 12, 13, 14 years of Woe, we made the cognizant decision to go into this year softer, and to kind of not really do too many shows. We did like 2 shows top of the new year, and then our first shows, we've got Casino Rama at the end of May, and then we're going back to China in June. But it's a pretty tour light year for us this year. And so the mix of how this whole experience has been for me, in addition to my brother's home for the first time, and I never thought he was going to be coming back to Ontario, all that happening, myself having a kid, the world kind of like, the world coming together in the way that it has for me these days, put this idea in my head, and certainly seeing the rise of AI tools and the benefits and drawbacks of that really landed me in a spot where I was like, if I could build something, what would I want as a musician? Well, ideally, I would have something that's kind of like a second brain approach for myself, where the more that I work with it, the better it would get at suggesting things to me. And, would I be able to sing to it or play something to it, and it would be able to understand that? Currently, no. If you open up ChatGPT and say, play me some chords, play me a scale, do whatever, it can't do that, nor can it understand or decipher the pitch that you're singing at or the rhythm that you're clapping to it. That doesn't exist right now. So I get chatting with my brother, and I say, dude, is there a way that we can, like, I feel like there's never been a better time to tap into these tools. I feel like something new every day is being released that might allow us to achieve something like this. We're also living at a time where there's push button song creation apps out there. I'm sure if you're aware of this, man, but like apps like Suno or Udio, you can go on there as a non-skilled person in music and type, give me 140 BPM dubstep jam about my parrot in this key and whatever, and it'll churn out a pretty convincing result to you. It's pretty impressive. It's pretty amazing tech. But my issue with those things, and my grand hope with this project of ours, is that what we've been talking about a bunch in this interview, the journey of music and the value of learning and growing as a person as well as a musician by learning an instrument, by becoming a composer, by creating in any sense of the word, that's going to be completely lost by these kind of like one-stop shop tools. And that scares me, and it saddens me as someone who's had a chance to access creative tools at an early age, and really go on this whole journey that most people only dream about. So to think about that, to have a new child in the mix, and to think about the world that he's getting into, and then to get my emotions out of the way and just think about the data of it all, trying to go data driven all day with this. Let's look at the data of what 20 years ago to me in Burlington, Ontario, was having access, sitting on a drum kit in grade 6. Does that still exist anymore? You look into the data, and the data says that is in sharp, sharp decline. You can always, and you will always be able to go to a Humber college or pay someone for expensive private lessons. But the reality is that, one, private lessons or even music school might not be the right approach, right? There's a huge variable that is each individual's learning style and how they want to actually go on this journey. And two, is the cost factor. You don't have to dig too deep into that data to see the underprivileged community side of things that otherwise previously would have not had no chance to access music tools early, creative tools, artistic tools in general early. Were they not available in public school? Those are going away at a rapid rate, because when budgets get tight, those things are deprioritized away from STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Those are all things that lead a little more directly to a reliable career path. But what those things don't account for is what can happen to a person when you give them that creative stimulation early. You see it in sense of self, self-confidence, cultural understanding, literally the way that that person views the world and their position in the world and their value as a human who can create interesting things and create something from nothing. is completely shaped by these things early. So all this comes together, and I see this opportunity for a little gap in the WOT schedule. My brother's back home. I've got a child. I'm thinking long term for the first time in my life. I have a house now and a nice mortgage. I'm like, here's my opportunity as a lifelong lover and appreciator of tech and new and exciting technology to say, I'd like to build something here that I would want if I had the ability to in AI, in music tech, with something that, like I mentioned, can truly communicate musically in a way that none of the tools currently can. And instead of providing a static finished song result, you can literally chat to Mira. Mira is the name of the product, musically intuitive real-time assistant. You can chat to Mira about how you're feeling that day. Maybe you're not feeling anything that day and you want her to get the ball rolling. She's going to draw on past interactions you've had together. She's built up a profile about you that has what's called persistent memory in the mix, where the more every interaction, every word you say to her, every new passage you play to her, she's going to formulate this understanding of you that's going to know you probably better than you know yourself, and your proclivities and your inclinations as an artist. And the idea with that is not to replace the creative process or replace the process of creating. It's to use these modern tools that are incredible to help you go down that road with truly a second version of yourself, essentially a mirror that can help you get there in a more effective way and be that true collaborator to you based on all the information that you've given it on the road to that. So we're still developing. We started in December, and we're actually, as soon as we're done this call, I got to go and get into test group mode, because we're about to roll out our first beta test group to a very small group, just to really get into the process of. I've learned so much from my brother doing this, like app release cycle, for example. We're probably on our 50th app release right now, just internal to my brother and I for testing. And now is the first time we're starting to widen that out to a smaller test user group. And again, making sure all the analytics are tracked properly, all the conversations are tracked properly, all those weak points we can actually zoom in on and retrain our AI based on our observations from the user testing. So that's about to happen. We're targeting somewhere in the summertime for a public app release. We want to make sure Mira is at that kind of holy shit level before we go out there. There's only one chance to make a first impression. You might have seen some of the videos thus far where I'm conversing with Mira, and it's cool because that's been impressive enough for some people to realize that, like, if you try to ask her a question that is not related to music, she's going to give you a nice little response, but then steer things back. If you ask her about politics, she's going to say, not really down to talk about that, but do you want to talk about it? Make some politically charged music, right?
Sorry, you should have that technology for Facebook for when anyone talks about politics, it brings them back to posting about music.
Yeah. There's an amazing amount of things that we can do with what are called agents. We were considering calling her the musically intuitive real-time agent. Agent's a little sci-fi to the average person, a little Agent Smith matrixy. Assistant is kind of like nice, more into the Siri world of like, it's your assistant. It's there. You can chat to wherever you want. The instruction manual has no place in this world we're getting into. It's the conversational experience, I think, is going to be part of everything. You want to be able to just chat away to anything you're doing and have it help you out with that, and not have to kind of like, who likes menu diving? Who likes doing that? So taking that even further, we're also targeting, I don't want to mention any brands by name just yet, so as to not shoot myself in the foot, but one of the really awesome applications of this we've thought of, in addition to having a standalone app version and a web app version, and one that can be an audio plugin that can go into Pro Tools, Ableton, Logic, is actually installing Mira within hardware. So we could work with hardware production companies that are making musical instruments at a large scale already and install a proprietary build of Mira where she has control over every one of that device's parameters. So imagine getting a new keyboard workstation from Yamaha, Nord, Akai, whatever. And instead of having, again, go menu diving, go online to the tutorials, go into the manual, just press a button and ask Mira how the hell it works. And she's going to show you in front of your face how every parameter works and how this thing happens, in addition to still being that conversational assistant that is going to allow you to achieve your musical goals. She can also control this piece of hardware and explain how that works in a really intuitive way to you. Like that, I'm really of the mind that that's coming for everything. I think we may have just gotten a bit of a jump start here on an application for music that could be really, really far reaching. And once again, kind of meet anyone out there, from the most accomplished virtuoso to the most absolute beginner, wherever they are. The video that I just posted today is a little glimpse at what's called the Mira test, where when you first meet Mira, she's just going to ask you a bunch of questions from all over the musical map to help start that building that profile for you, to get a feel for, okay, this is a clear beginner. I'm going to tailor all my outputs based on that. Or, oh, wow, this person really knows what they're talking about. Let me keep hitting them with harder and harder questions until I find that ceiling. And then based on them mixing in where they actually want to head, we can come up with the perfect approach here, kind of thing. So,
So
yeah, man.
so theoretically, I could buy a new keyboard and I could just tell Mira, hey, can you put the keyboard in this key for this song? Could you start the click track at 120 beats per minute? That kind of thing.
Literally anything. We're building for anything. We're prioritizing the education angle to start, because that is currently the most underrepresented demographic right now. For if you're taking a 60-minute lesson once a week over the course of the year, you're paying no less than $3,000 American for that. And again, that's at the hope that it's going to be a personality match and a teaching style match, right? That number completely discounts a huge, we're talking about hundreds of millions of people around the world can't afford that, right? So we're trying to build something here that can be a one-stop shop, just like how ChatGPT is broadly a one-stop shop for kind of anything. ChatGPT is, it's good to think about it like kind of like a large body of water that isn't very deep. ChatGPT is going to be really good at giving you a good amount of instruction in a large variety of topics. But if you want to go super deep in any one area, case in point, music here, it's going to be limited there, right? So we're building this to be the be all end all one stop shop for all things music, whether you want to, our three pillars are teach, test, collaborate, right? So any of those areas, what you just mentioned there would all be stuff that would be kind of tied into Mira, the audio plugin, or Mira within like a piece of music hardware. We'll definitely get there. It's tough. We're a two-man team right now and fighting the fight of knowing that once we get to post revenue, we don't want to fundraise yet. We could, because of how hot AI is, I don't even want to say, we could take an absurd amount of money at this stage, but that's expensive money to take because we'd be coughing up a lot of equity for that. Whereas getting to a point where we can show user growth stats, we can show revenue stats as a two-person team to then be able to justify a larger valuation and start to staff up a little bit from there. Is kind of how we're choosing to treat things right now. So all that's coming for sure. Right now, it's about making sure that we're going to know if this is a success or not, just based on how we're going to build this iPhone app and market it as this thing. Every musician has voice notes on their phone, has like a wealth of voice notes, right? Back to that, what I was saying about how some of the best songs ever created we may never hear. I guarantee you right now, in Bruno Mars's phone, there's a banger sitting in there, Lady Gaga's phone, that she forgot about. That's one of the ways the angles we're gonna market this is like, hit Mira with an idea, hum her a little tune when you're rushing off to catch the bus. She can go and start working on that based on knowing you and your preferences while you're at work that day. Not to replace you, again, not to replace you, to come up with ideas that you would have otherwise come up with on your own in the right creative environment. She can start to kind of do those things for you. So like that one-stop shop, and you might have seen some of our early demos where we built our MVP. It's called like our first demo with like a separate little computer, a separate microphone, a separate MIDI keyboard, a separate speaker, things that are super clunky for your average consumer. So to have that all cooked into the iPhone app experience now, and to be like, I'm currently working on like curating certain sound sets that Mira will be able to draw from when someone asks her to play some chords or play this song for me. She'll have her own kind of custom sounds that are built in. We're working on that right now so that it's that one-stop shop, idiot proof, casting the widest net possible kind of thing. And if we have success with that, giddy up, dude. It's like sky's the limit in terms of we're going to have a version of Mira for absolutely every musical application out there. And we truly want to be part of the reason why music education is solved for globally, why that barrier to entry is fully flattened out, and people in developing countries and people that are underprivileged can have access to the same level of high quality, creative tools at a young age or at an old age, just like I was talking about with Volta's audience. Maybe there's that. I hear from so many people, oh, you're in a band, man. I love guitar. I took guitar lessons for a while, years back, and I never stuck with it, but I love music and I listen to music every night. Like, this is for you. This is for anybody who wants to just chat and have something, identify where they're at, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and hold their hand, take them on the journey of music and be their guide through the whole process.
So for our listeners that are interested in staying in the loop, that would like to get this app when it is eventually released, is there a website they can go to or a newsletter? I saw there was an Instagram page. Where can they go?
Yeah, we're most active on Instagram right now. Again, just trying to go data driven and cast that widest net, but intelligentobjects.io. Intelligent Objects is the name of our company. IntelligentObjects.io is our website. Very simple kind of landing page right now, but it does have a link in there to subscribe for updates and to also let us know. And this is going to be rolling out in wider and wider amounts if you are interested in being an early tester of Mira, which is going to come with certain lifetime perks and such. And obviously is a huge part of us making sure our thing is battle tested ahead of actually going out to a wide release, public release. So yeah, intelligentobjects.io for that. And certainly our Instagram.com/intelligentobjects. We're super excited and still have a long way to go, but we've covered a lot of ground thus far. And it's kind of incredible, man, what you can accomplish as a really stubborn, motivated two-person team these days. My brother wearing certainly the technical hat and me wearing the every single other hat. It's amazing. It's like the Hormozy thing, right? I that's why I've been watching a lot of Hormozy, is because like I'm trying to really make sure I'm making the most of this opportunity right now. And like that whole idea of, one thing he says a lot, which I love, is I'd rather be a failure than a coward. I absolutely love that, because it's about like, you should never regret going all in on something, even if you totally falls flat and you fail miserably. Fail proudly and fail hard, so at least you can never regret not going all in. And then that thing, of course, as well, about success is about how long you're willing to sit in discomfort, to know that the prize that awaits you at the end of that discomfort is something that a lot of folks don't have the ability to truly go after in life, you know?
Yeah, people tend to regret the things they never went for versus the things they went for and failed at. So, uh, yeah, can you can you handle the final three questions here? We're near the end. Final three. Okay. When you look back on your life and career, what are you most proud of and what are you most grateful for?
Wow, man. Yeah, that's another toughie. But I know I already touched on this a bit, and we've kind of been like, there's been a thread throughout this whole chat about this stuff. But most proud, I think it's the same answer for both, to be honest. Most proud of and most grateful for is having a chance to, when I think back to that young kid who was jamming in the basement with Gary and Mike playing Blink-182 songs. You know, we were so inspired by we were lovers of music who were so inspired and had a reason to want to look forward to finishing out the school day so we could race over to Gary's house and jam, and think that maybe one day somebody would hear what we made, or whether together or as individuals down the line, we'd be able to make something and be part of something that could actually go out and potentially reach millions of people. Like, what? No way. And when I think about all the things that have happened and all the opportunities, if I had to boil it down to a single thing, being able to be a part of something greater than the sum of its parts, that's been able to weather the storm of a million ups and downs over the last 15 years, and wind up in a spot where at the end of the day, we're still inspiring people to want to go and make their own music, or to want to get through a hard time in their life, and go, or the soundtrack to their love and their loss. Being able to provide that and think back to that when we're nearing the end of our time on this planet is something that I think will stick out the most in terms of our achievements and what we're most proud of and grateful for, that we had the opportunity, that we had the chance to have a platform that could be that source of inspiration, or source of getting through hardship, or source of celebration for people. That's a big deal. And that's something that I think we'll always be so grateful for, in addition to all the amazing things this has afforded us. To be able to make a mark like that and kind of leave our little mark on music history like that, I think is pretty powerful.
If you could go back in time and you could sit down next to your 10-year-old self and you could share words of advice. So taking all the experience since then, all the mentorship and lessons and highs and lows, if you could boil that down to a little bit of advice that you could whisper to cute little Joel sitting there to help guide him through this human experience, what do you say to him?
Dude, honestly, I would just say, don't stop overthinking shit. Don't Hey, you're about to get into a bunch of years where you're going to have a really tough time up in your head because you overthink everything, and you may or may not inherit your mom's mental challenges in terms of overthinking stuff and depression and anxiety. There's a light at the end of that tunnel, and try to go easy on yourself along that way, because your work ethic and your stubbornness that you're already showcasing as a young kid is going to wind up paying you back in a way that you may have never imagined, if you just continue to go with that gut and to follow your passions and dreams. Obviously, my parents supporting that again was a major thing. Other people in life, like Mark Kelso, I mentioned everything, them potentially not voicing support is one thing. For it to come for your parents is a different thing. Like I said, my buddy Derek, like that was a hard crackdown from his folks, right? Saying like, we get that you like it. That's going to be a hobby. You need to get a real job. That for sure is one thing. Like, hey, be nice to your folks, young Joel, because they, for as much as you might have those challenges that any kid has with their parents, that's reaching that, approaching that early adult age and stuff, has that support that they provided me with is truly what gave me the confidence to lean so heavily into the things I decided to that have wound up affording me the life that I've had here.
Is there anything you'd like to say to the fans that have supported you over the last 15 years?
Of course, man. To all the folks that have been there since day one, or not day one, like it's the lifers are a given. People that just saw their first boat video 2 weeks ago. Anybody who's supported us in any way, small or large, over these years, it gets tossed around a lot. But like, we would not have a career. We would not have had a chance to live our dreams for the last 15 years without the support of others. We like the music that we make, but that doesn't account for a whole lot. There's a lot of groups making great music that like the music they make and think that they should have a certain profile or a certain trajectory. That has been entirely and exclusively decided by the fan response to things. And we would not still be here after so many ups and downs without that ongoing support. And we have an incredible group of like real lifers that have truly been there since day one and who've been to like, 50, 100 shows at this point. They're amazing and we love them so much. But the folks that are coming in new as well, not to discount them at all. Like, it's, people say they discover us and then they're just like down the rabbit hole on YouTube of like years and years and years and different permutations and different lineups and different kind of phases of us. There's a lot to discover there. So once again, that history wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the ongoing support of so many people around the world. So they will never get a chance to meet, that will never know the true extent of, right? Again, you get lost in those numbers, like hundreds of millions and billions of views and stuff. That's the value too of getting a chance to go out and meet people and chat with people and hear about the stories where our music has affected people's lives. And like I said, gotten them through hard times, been their wedding song, right? Been a funeral song, any variation of those things. It's insane. It's hard to put into words, man. Hopefully we've done a decent job at trying to put it into words over 3 hours here.
As we wrap up this interview, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you for your lifelong pursuit of mastery as a musician and a multi-instrumentalist. I want to commend you for having the courage to dream big and actually pursue that dream and see it through to completion. You've achieved things that most musicians won't achieve in their life, just a tremendous amount of success. And that success shows the rest of us musicians what is truly possible if we commit to our big vision for our lives and go after our dreams. I want to thank you for creating incredible music that's become the soundtrack to the lives of millions of people around the world. You guys provide a source of fun and positivity and inspiration that puts a smile on people's faces, that brightens their day. And in the state that the world is in now, I mean, that's what more could we actually need than what you guys are providing. I want to thank you for creating an app that will help musicians on their musical journeys to further develop their musical acumen. And last but not least, I want to thank you for sitting down with me for this interview over the last 2.5, 3 hours, answering all my crazy questions as a Walk Off the Earth fan. Joel, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Dude, Joel, can't thank you enough, man. It's been a pleasure. We definitely touched on some stuff that I would have never thought we would touch on, and questions that I've never come across in all these year in interviews. And the only question I'll leave you with is, what is your big theory going into Severance season 3?
Oh my God, this is going to turn into a 6-hour interview.
Just I know it will. So just give me a quick, like, what is your like elevator pitch on what a potential angle on season 3 might be based on where we left off?
So I think now it turns out that once you see all of the 2 seasons, it's been Mark trying to rescue his wife from the severed floor. And now it's been flipped where it'll be Gemma who's trying to rescue her husband from the severed floor. So that's my theory that I'll leave it with.
Because like the outside team now, right? Much as Gemma was so confused because she didn't realize that there's a barrier in that doorway. So Mark shuts the door on her. He's like, "What are you doing? Come with me. Why are you going away with that other girl?" Which people are hating on that too. It's like, why would any Mark, who has a growing resentment for Outie Mark, who by the way called Helen a Heleny, like he clearly doesn't care enough, why would he not want, even if it's an extra couple minutes with the only person he's ever felt love for, even if they're running directly into being tackled by Milchick or whatever, and they're stuck in there, Why would he not do that? So my thought is, yeah, exactly. The Audi team now is Cobell. We've got Devin and Rickon, but Cobell, obviously, as the we've recently learned that she's the creator of the severance procedure, and has really had to sit on her hands with that and keep herself quiet, as Jamie Egan has taken the kind of reaped all the reward of that. So now we've got this growing Audi team, and obviously Lumen isn't going to let any of those guys that just completely busted things wide open leave. So I think they're going to be kept, like you were saying, as like permanent innies, just like Gemma was, potentially down on the testing floor. And it's going to be this grand mission to try and get them out of there. I think the biggest variable and probably one of the most important characters in season 3 is going to be Milchick, because you see him start to crack a little bit and crumble at some of the issues that he has with his position at Lumen and Lumen's viewpoint on everything over this season. We didn't get, I was hoping, I don't know if you were too, that like he'd be
The
like
origin story of Mr. Milkshake.
for sure, but also just like he'd be like an instrumental part in the achievement of the wrap up of season 2. He wasn't. In fact, he was still, if anything, still very pro Lumen and very trying to kind of keep things in a spot. But the hope is that he will finally crack into season 3 and be that kind of guy on the inside, the mole on the inside that somehow is able, as a non-severed person, able to kind of, be that middle person between the Audi gang and trying to crack these people out of there. Man, who knows?
So two things. I think Any Mark made the right decision for Any Mark, which is number one, Any Mark loves Helly, and he doesn't know Gemma as his wife, really. He just found that out. So if he has to choose between women, it's a stranger or the woman he loves. So it makes sense there. And also, when he leaves that door, that's suicide for him. So he's choosing life and he's choosing the woman he loves. People are angry because overall we want Audi Mark to be with his wife. And that's the reaction is exactly, that's the genius of what the show people did, is to show the two people, two different lives pulled in different directions, and you don't know who to cheer for. That's how you know it's great writing, is the polarity, I guess, the duality of what's going on.
It's total viewer manipulation, right? Because the whole show plays with this idea.
I feel manipulated.
The whole show toys with this idea of that, like, these innies are treated less than, right? It comes right from Helena at that one point. I'm a person, you are not, right? That whole thing there. And then of course, this person inside, even if it's only 5 seconds more, wants to at least just be in the hand of that person that just showed them the feeling of love. Like, come on. But it certainly sets things up in an interesting way. And just like the hope is that they don't do like a Westworld with it and like
ruin it
and go too different. Like, it's, people miss the days where Milchick showed up to Macrodata Refinement and was just smiling away, and like, hey refiners, and they were happy to see him. But I don't know. Also, Dan Erickson has said he has like like a true, I don't know if like in the UK, they don't milk TV shows until every last penny has been drained out of them. The UK Office, they just did like 4 seasons and a Christmas special and they were done. Dan Erickson has said, regardless of what happens with what Apple wants, he's been able to visualize like a nice kind of clear arc for this thing. So he already knows how he would want it to end.
Just a few seasons. Yeah.
Like tops 1 or 2 more kind of thing. So, yeah.
So what people are cheering for is they want a Mr. Milchick backstory like the others got. And they want Milchick to change where he helps the innies lead the uprising. They like when Milchick is bad to the innies, like that's the entertaining part, but they also like when he's bad to the company. So they just want him to be bad, but eventually they want him to join the innies and turn good. So that's what we're hoping
they
for.
Truly have love triangles happening between the same character and the same human, and they have us rooting for different sides of the same person,
of one person. Yeah.
Masterful.
Yeah. So the only way I know to wrap this up now after talking Severance is to say to the Joel Cassady fans, the Walk Off the Earth fans, the podcast fans, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking with us for the last 2.5, 3 hours, and we'll see you on the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Who would you like me to feature next for a 2-hour deep dive interview? You can let me know in the comments. You can also send me an email at joelmartinmastery@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me on all social media platforms at joelmartinmastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.